It's a bright Monday morning. Welcome to the AM News here on the AM Show. My name is Pakwisi Shandov. To our very first story, the management of the Electricity Company of Ghana and the Ghana Water Company Limited have indicated that they are overburdened with operational costs and are struggling to survive. They are still insisting on an increment of 148% for electricity and 344% for water. The utility service providers made these known at a public hearing organized by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission in the Volta regional capital of Ho.
The Ghana Water Company Limited and the Electricity Company of Ghana presented a multi-year major tariff proposal to the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, proposing a 344% and 148% tariff increment respectively. Because of this, the PURC embarked on a public hearing to provide a common platform for the utility providers to engage the public and explain the reasons for the proposed tariff increment. Speaking at one of such public hearings in Ho, the General Manager of the Regulatory Management Unit of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Sylvia Noshi, indicated the proposed increment was informed by inflation and an increase in exchange rates.
If you consider the impact of the macroeconomic variables, what it means is that our inadequate distribution service charge has now diminished, it has dwindled, it has eroded, it has shrunk. In fact, you can help me with the words. It has shrunk considerably. And this has impacted on ECG's operation. Now, the prevailing tariff as it stands now does not meet the cost of distribution business. And so this is why we are proposing this time round for a full cost recovery tariff. In our tariff proposal, it is only on the DSC1, which we are saying has increased by 148. And I would say that currently ECG is a struggling distribution company that requires urgent support.
She added that her outfit is also proposing a street light tariff to raise revenue to defray expenses on street lights.
In other places like Accra, you have people erecting street lights every now and then. And so it means that as a utility, for us to account for our energy sales, which if we don't would translate into system loss for us, we need to continuously or regularly go to the field to account for the street lights which are in place. And we often would have to submit the cost of these street lights maybe to the ministries. And they are interested in knowing whether you have calculated the costs well using the appropriate tariff. And therefore, based on that, we are proposing that the Commission can come out with a tariff to help us account for the cost of street lights accurately.
The manager of the Corporate Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Department of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Seth Atiapa, detailed that the proposed tariff increment is because of the high cost of production due to pollution, maintenance, debt overhang, inflation and depreciation of the cedi.
You say, oh, I don't do galamsey. But do you have a small factory? Do you have a small workshop? What do you push into the water bodies? Your homes. When we finish all our things, where do you throw the water away? We are sensitizing you so that we desist from all these practices. But if we continue to do it, the water we abstract will become more dirty. We will require more money to treat it because we buy more chemicals. And this is what has happened to us. And even in some cases, we have stopped treatment completely because the turbidity or the pollution in the water has made it to be untreatable.
Participants lamented the proposed increase in tariff, suggesting it should be reduced considering the hardship in the country. The Executive Secretary of the PURC, Ishmael Aka, said the Commission will do further engagements before issuing its recommendations.
So all what they presented here are their proposals. PURC has not done any analysis on, more like we've not come out with a tariff. After everything, PURC has the mandate to announce it. So we will look at the numbers and come out with a tariff. And when we come out, every quarter, we look at macroeconomic factors, especially exchange rate, inflation, and the cost of fuel. Then we can do some minor adjustment to the figures. By 14th June, we should complete all engagement. Then, as I'm talking to you, we also have another team, a technical team. Those people are running the numbers to see how much it will be. After we get the numbers, then we also engage policymakers. So we engage the leadership of Parliament, Economic Management Team, and others, the Minister of Energy, Minister of Finance, because some of these things, including government on land loans, these are loans government gave to, for instance, Ghana Water. We don't have power over such money. So what is maybe the Minister of Finance directive on that? So we do that from 14th, and so by the 1st July, we should be able to come out with a decision.
Fred Kwame Asari, JoyNews. Ho.
Now, sections of the Tarkwa to Tarkwa road are deplorable and have become death traps. Road users are blaming government for failing to fulfill numerous promises made to them. Kojo Brace has more in the following report.
So this is in Soyem, and in Soyem is part of the Tarkwa and Soyem municipality. Now, this is just to tell you how bad the road is from Tarkwa to Tarkwa. This is a road that the government signed a contract for. But from 2021, when the sword was cut for the road to be constructed, nothing has happened on this road. This is how deep some of the manholes on this road can be.
They've come to measure the road. What they told us is they are constructing the road, international road, to Burkina Faso. But they did even some work at the side and side of the road just 2 months ago. But we've never seen anything again.
The almost for a bird from west. Or this is a poor from west. It's a fair condition. A catch the kura. I got a conscience. It's a young man. I can more free a quanu, a boxer, timber, a gold, cocoa. On this is Western. That was what it's a young. I do not play in a quantua. I had to put to a night. And if I quantum, we did a person, what time to tree. No patrol me na wasa. Na juma ina ina ba ye bi asa na karaka ka kwam. Agwana na jupa na mkwani so ne kwadi. Enta wo de ye ne ba njoto kwani so a. Ehu ba bi afa. Isa hire ye general. What na fish pond. Ina mpo mo ba ye. That was the kwana ba no mo ye. E wota kwa kwani so ne ko ye ka chiri.
Ade last year na ti the Akufo is there this year for roads anamboa yet in the whole radio stations, TV stations, talk at the Kufa say year with the year for road. A company no baso abe kwano, one my kwano be juju kwano chen. Drivers be said driver cut me to otefe anytime bia. Cut him tefe anytime bia and the Kufa the other as Yankupon canon I419. The whole Ghana president now for me as sometimes maybe say Ghana Western Ghana. As sometimes be somebody team be now Western Ghana one. No, the Kufa do was showing Yankupon canon.
Some residents of the Techiman municipality in the Bono East region want government to intensify its See Something, Say Something campaign to create awareness and sensitize the populace on the need to stay vigilant with the lingering terrorist threats in the West African sub-region, with the Techiman Central Market attracting traders from neighboring Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire and Niger. These residents say the municipality could be a target for these terrorist groups if measures are not taken to foil their possible entry into the country. And Asabit has more in the following report.
Over the past few months, there is a heightened threat of terrorist attacks globally from groups or individuals motivated by several factors, and Ghana cannot be ruled out following a spate of terrorist attacks in neighboring countries and the lingering political and ethnic tensions at home. With the strategic location of the Techiman Central Market, which attracts all sorts of people from the entire country and other neighboring countries, we hit the streets to engage some residents about their fears so far as these terrorist threats are concerned. Murtada Mohammed is a resident and a tutor at the Al Farouk College of Education. He described the situation as worrying.
I listened to the news on Joy TV, and then a lot of people after that were commenting about it. And then, it's something that is so worrying. It's a worrying issue, and everybody is so much alarmed in our community.
With Zongo communities being a hub for strangers from all walks of life, Murtada Mohammed calls on residents to be extra careful in dealing with strangers.
Zongo is a community where we have a lot of people coming in and then going out of the community at any time. We are not in the normal times. Therefore, now things have changed. So we have to also change our styles of kind of a relationship in the community. So the first time we come across strangers, we don't have to open up to them. We have to treat them as kind of a possible element of terrorism so that we can stay safe in the community.
Just like Murtada Mohammed, Christian Techijan, a resident and a banker, also expressed worry at the situation and noted that the location of the Techiman Central Market could attract attacks from these terrorist groups.
It's a worrying development because if you look at our neighboring countries, they've been experiencing it with the possible imminence of terrorist attack in Ghana. I think it's a very worrying news. It used to be abstract, but it is as close to us as just about Togo. So it's something that is quite worrying.
His major concern, however, has to do with the fact that the populace are not much alert about the situation at hand.
Some of us with our activity, always roaming in the market and checking people around, I don't really see that high alertness as far as the citizenry is concerned. On the institution front, yes, there is that high alert, but on the general citizenry and their everyday activity, you don't see anything extraordinary being done to get alert.
Member of Parliament for the area who doubles as the Deputy Minister for Local Government, Martin Ejemens Akosa, called on the general public to report strange faces and characters within their various communities by adhering to the Security Ministry's See Something, Say Something campaign.
The very location of Techiman, its centrality, makes us more prone. The approach being adopted by national security is to involve all of us as citizens. We should open our eyes, we should be alert, very attentive, detect and report. It's been so rightly termed, See Something, Say Something. It's a campaign that involves everybody. We should all be watchdogs of our neighborhood. Look out for characters, whose identity, movements, presence raises questions.
He was, however, quick to add that residents should bear with the various security checkpoints at the entries in order to help identify such threats.
Satisfactorily, I think there is enough police presence at almost all those entry points, effectively policing and monitoring people who go in, who come out. And we'll just ask ourselves as citizens to bear with the police, especially in this crucial time where we are fighting this terrorism menace, so that we are all safe.
Both Murtada Mohammed and Christian Techijan have suggestions on what needs to be done to ensure the people are safe.
The market is a very vast one, and the number of people that come in from outside is huge. So it's important that the sensitization exercise is done on a broader spectrum so that we'll be able to eradicate it.
I want to take this opportunity to kind of inform the imams that when they mount the podium or the pulpit at the mosque on Fridays, they should try as much as possible to include in their sermon these issues regarding educating the masses on how to protect themselves regarding this issue of terrorism.
Alas Sabit, JoyNews, Techiman.
In 2019, the Christian Health Association of Ghana, CHAC, partnered Farm Access Ghana to use the safe care standards and methodology to assess rate and benchmark quality among the CHAG network health facilities. This project, which is to support government's quest to attain universal health coverage by 2030, focused on building real value and create huge impact, which was accompanied with partnerships that sought to inspire facilities to give their utmost best. One of the facilities, the St. Francis Xavier Hospital at Asinfosu, has been rated Safe Care Level 4 out of the 5 levels in their quality improvement journey. Richard Kwejenyakun toured the facility and has more in this report.
They don't know, but sometimes there's misconception that when they see it, they said the baby has got asram. So they will stay at home and do all manner of traditional medications until it reached the latter stage before they come.
Vivian Kodia is the nurse in charge of the neonatal intensive care unit at the St. Francis Xavier Hospital here at Asinfosu, telling how the hospital has been tackling neonatal jaundice, one of the major challenges mothers in the operational area face.
Test the brain. When the child grows up, he will have more disabilities like brain damage, like deafness. Some even can't walk because of all these neonatal jaundice. When Counter-terrorism sets in, that's the end of the baby. So the earlier you report, the better the outcome. For the condition they know, but they don't know the actual name, or they don't know there's a treatment for it.
The hospital is situated along the Cape Coast Kumasi Highway and takes care of the major emergencies, including road crashes on that stretch. This emergency nurse sums up what they go through and how they've been very responsive to the needs of the people.
We serve the Asin North, Central, and then Asin South. And we have people coming as far as from Ashanti region, New Edubiasi, to this place. People come along from Cape Coast, Isikuma, or Dobimba, Akwa district. Some of them also come here. And then Oda, going to the eastern region side, people from Oda also come around. So all cases, accident cases especially, the main road, the highway from Cape Coast to Kumasi. So we have a lot of accident cases coming in, day in and day out. Any diabetes, their complications, they come in. Children with convulsions are brought in here. Snake bites, this season of raining, we have a lot of snake bites also coming around.
Beyond this unit, the hospital has been recording huge successes in terms of maternal care delivery.
We have been rated as a level 4 facility among the CHAG facilities, which is a great achievement from an international body. It's like patting us at our back for the work we have done.
The sister in charge of the St. Francis Xavier Hospital at Asinfosu, Sister Georgina Donzi, says the hospital's current rating by the International Health Assessing Body comes as no surprise because of the kind of care they deliver to the people.
Financing, which is not easy, because to improve on the care, we need human resources, equipment, and all the other logistics to improve on the care. But if the money or resources are not available, it's difficult. Even to
Safe care is to inspire the improvement of quality and safety in healthcare delivery through innovative approaches such as the use of digital solutions, with the realization that the first wealth of the people is their health. In supporting Ghana's quest to attain a universal health coverage by 2030, Farm Access Safe Care Program, Quality Improvement Standards and Methodology seeks to identify gaps and challenges which need to be addressed in some of Ghana's health facilities. The Safe Care Healthcare Quality Standards were developed through collaborative work of Farm Access Foundation with the Joint Commission International and the Council for Health Services Accreditation of Southern Africa. The Safe Care International Standards measure and rate healthcare facilities' level of risk and fluctuations in service delivery and outcomes. The rating is assigned ranks from Safe Care Level 1 to Level 5, with Level 1 being the lowest, indicating severe risk and highest fluctuations in the quality of services delivered, and Level 5 being the highest.
St. Francis already, we stand for quality. So this has come to be like a baseline information for us to improve on, because this is an international assessing body that has come, and we have the checklist which will help us as we go about our work and our service.
Sister in charge of the St. Francis Xavier Hospital at Asimfosu in the Central Region, Sister Georgina Donson, expressing her excitement at the recognition. She believes there is no turning back as they have to work towards attaining the highest level, that's level 5. But first, they need a boost in their finances in order to step up to the highest level.
We have always aimed for giving the highest quality of care to our patients. So this time that we are going, the whole world will be seeing, and patients will be also listening. Now they know that we are a level 4, facility. What the patient will be looking forward from us is when they come, they will have prompt care, timely intervention, safe services, client involvement in service delivery, availability of health service always, and best customer care and service, financing, which is not easy. Because to improve on the care, we need human resources, equipment, and all the other logistics to improve on the care.
Sister Donzin also wants patrons of the hospital to expect more quality health care as she rolls out some recommendations.
We have a recommendation here. We said we also have senior staff here. We wish if CHAC could train some of our people in-house so that we'll have them on the ground, and then the assessment could be done within in-house to help us to improve of what we have achieved already, so that we won't go back. We'll always build on what we have achieved.
The hospital that serves more than 6 districts in the Central Region is aiming to be a referral facility that would take care of every ailment and conditions they are confronted with without necessarily referring them to the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital and the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital. Reporting for JoyNews from the St. Francis Xavier Hospital in Asimfosu, Richard Kwejunyako.
That's all for the news. The show continues with Benjamin and Bernice.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's get into some major stories this morning. We're joined by Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. Sule, a very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Is it the nippy weather because your vim, your pep this morning seems to be a bit... I hope you're well.
Yes, I'm well. I think I was down with cold in the last 4 or 5 days, but it's better. So
we thank the Lord. We thank the Lord for that. Let's quickly get into some very pertinent stories this morning. I'd like to start, though, from the end of the rains. They are here again, and it's sickening because every time it pelts, some people have their rooms flooded, others have to scamper about trying to find safety. Today, we're getting into that conversation as far as the Hydrological Services Department is concerned and other bodies, even the Auditor General and its report on things that have been done and things that have not been done. But I know we've spoken about this time and again. When you look at where we find ourselves, what would you like to see in the next few weeks? I say this because sometimes we make it so futuristic. In the next few weeks, in the next month, for example, what would Suleiman Abrahima like to see Ghana doing to stem the tide, at least to some little extent?
Well, simply, I would want to see an enforcement of the directive given by the president about 2 weeks ago, that buildings that are standing on waterways blocking the flow of water must be pulled down by all district assemblies across the country. I think it's one thing that at least for once we must see a directive being carried out in total, as opposed to the usual thing where the president speaks fine and then we have no action. I believe unless we commit to these disciplinary actions, we would continue to be confronted by the challenges of flooding anytime it just pours quite a little, because the water has no way of flowing, and therefore it just has to accumulate where it can find any little spots. And quite often that happens to be somebody's house or somebody's compound. And so, yes, unfortunately, people will be affected, but the circumstances we find ourselves in, we have no choice but to do that. So the enforcement of the president's directive is the way to go.
And we've heard, let me just switch the conversation a bit. Let's talk about corruption. And I know that's an issue, an area where you're very concerned. The Office of the Special Prosecutor, and kudos to him, Kisi Ajabing, himself a former lecturer of mine. But apart from not having a board in place and all the other mitigating circumstances, we also hear that the OSP is cash-strapped, and all the promises that have been made, I mean, in terms of logistics. I'm sure you recall what Mr. President said when he was swearing in the new special prosecutor. We'll give you this, we'll do that, we'll enable your office. But it appears all those promises, I do not know what is happening to them. Your take?
Well, it's becoming really difficult to discuss matters of our country, because it's almost like every aspect, every issue comes with a lot of depression. It seems that almost everywhere things are getting bad and worse by the day. I've always said that if we have a president or a leader who is truly committed to the fight against corruption, we wouldn't need the Office of the Special Prosecutor, because whatever the Office of the Special Prosecutor is supposed to do, the Attorney General legally can do them. It's just that we are acknowledging, and the President acknowledges, that because whoever becomes the Attorney General and Minister for Justice at any point in time is a member of the ruling party, it may be difficult for such a person to take on members of the same party who commit crime or engage in acts of corruption. But I think that if we, in the advanced countries that we try to look up to, I don't think it's about having somebody appointed who becomes like, look, this is going to be the enemy of the government, and the appointment is done by the same government. That's why we all hailed Martinamidu's appointment, because we thought, well, that was a demonstration by the president that I don't care whoever is taken on, so long as an act of crime is committed, yeah, the person should be prepared to face it. And then we later read and heard about the frustrations that Martinamidu went through until the appointment of Mr. Kisi Ajabing. Of course, people express sentiments about Mr. Ajabing's appointment. He is a fine lawyer, a very brainy guy. Kisi has defended me before. And there is no doubt that in terms of competence, he will be able to deliver his mandate. But is he getting the necessary logistics, support, and all of that? Is it not surprising that for almost 8 or 9 months, the board has not been constituted?
The first time under Martinamidu, it took 5 months. So I guess this time...
What does it take to constitute the board, really? I remember, there's supposed to be a civil society representative who must be a woman. And we had this conversation way back, about 6 months ago, trying to discuss whether we have a name to suggest to the president, as we did under Martinamidu's tenure. And this conversation is about more than 6 months ago. And you wonder, is it that the president is struggling to find persons who are competent enough to serve as board members of the Office of the Special Prosecutor? Or it's just one of the ways of...
So as we know it, the names have been proffered from the relevant institutions, Shraj, among others, the anti-corruption grouping, that, like you said, a woman to be selected. The names have been presented. Everyone is wondering why the board has not been constituted on the back of the names, because the people you're going to use to form the board are, the presidency is fully aware of the people. So next step, just constitute the board and let the work of the OSP go ahead. But that is the thorny aspect, because for some reason, unbeknownst to the rest of us, it's simply not being done.
Well, I think the reason can only be that the president is not committed to having the OSP function as effectively as it should. That can only be the reason.
Isn't that a bit of a stretch to say that just because the board hasn't been constituted, it means President Akufo-Addo is unwilling to, aid the OSP do its work?
But he is the one who is supposed to constitute the board. It's not me. It's not you. It's not civil society. And therefore, who should we blame? A simple act as putting together and swearing in the board members of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. And if it was not necessary, the law wouldn't have it in place. I think that it is because it is necessary for the functioning of the office. That is why the makers of the law said there must be a board.
Right.
And to the extent that for 8 months, 9 months, there's no board, who should we place the responsibility on, or who should we blame? He's the person who must do it, and that is the president. Unfortunately, it's becoming challenging to discuss issues of this country without, roping in the president, because again, we all talk about the enormous powers that have been vested in the president, and the fact that there's a need for constitutional amendment to even take away some of the powers. And so long as the president continues to wield those powers, he must exercise those powers. Otherwise, he is the one we blame. We cannot blame people who don't have the power to act.
Right.
And so the office is cash-strapped. The office doesn't have the requisite number of staff to be able to do its work. The board of the office has not been constituted. What else can you say apart from saying, well, those could be the mechanisms in place to disempower the office? And if so, it's the president who must act.
Right. I'll come back to you later when we're wrapping up, after we've looked at the papers. I'll come back to you with two crucial issues. One to do with assets declaration, and the other one to do with the National Cathedral. But let's take a chill pill for now and get into the papers. The Daily Graphic, local textbooks printing begins. 5 printers confirm action, and the local printers have disclosed that they have commenced the printing of government textbooks for basic schools under the new curriculum. The printers are GPAC Limited, a subsidiary of the Graphic Communications Group Limited, the Buck Press, Appointed Time Printing Limited, JK Industries Limited, and SecPrint Limited. Now, the disclosure was corroborated by the Minister of Education, Dr. Yao Osei Educhum. At least we've got some work starting here. We've been talking about the local printers and the printing of our textbooks and restricting it to these local printers to feed our own industry. It's taken off. Good tidings. I mean, positives in there.
Yeah, absolutely. That for me is a positive development. It's something that ought to have been in place long ago. But as they say, it's better late than never. We hope that the local printers would discharge their mandate as effectively and acquit that confidence that has been reposed in them to produce our textbooks locally. As I said, this is something that ought to have been done. This is not something that ought to even be a headline story, because why? I mean, that is printing of textbooks that over the years we've had to contract foreign printers to do. So yes, this is a positive development that the Ministry of Education has taken, and we need to commend them for that. And I believe that, as I said, the local printers would also acquit that confidence reposed in them, so that we would not have any cause to say that, well, we ought to have continued with the printing of the textbooks from outside the country.
Let's look at some other stories. Green Ghana, Lands Ministry designates seedling centers, and there's also public sector workers overpaid, according to the government statistician. And then ECOWAS determined to sustain constitutional rule. That's according to President Akufo-Addo. I'll just pose 2 questions to you, but let me go to page 16 as we reflect on those 2 stories. I find them rather interesting. So ECOWAS determined to sustain constitutional rule. And our president, who is also ECOWAS chair, has said ECOWAS is determined to restore constitutional rule in Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali. He said the regional body would also work assiduously towards impressing on the countries to do better with the security and humanitarian challenges they were facing. We've seen, Suleimana, what has happened in the sub-region. Over the weekend, we saw what happened in Nigeria in terms of that church, attack or standoff. Now we see also in Togo another issue where, someone, snatched the security person's gun in a market. Only God knows what would have happened if he hadn't been accosted very quickly. I mean, this could have been another, random shooter, just takes the gun and starts shooting people. It's becoming very serious. We've not experienced it here yet, but I always say, when you see your neighbor's beard on fire, you get water by your side. What is your quick take on that?
Well, the developments in our region are quite troubling. I just don't know how we got into this kind of situation. Boko Haram started in Nigeria, and it was almost like, oh, well, this is a matter that can be dealt with so simply. It's going to be dealt with. And for over a decade now, Boko Haram has grown into something else. And in fact, other fundamentalist groups have infiltrated. And now we are seeing things like, the church shooting yesterday, very, very unfortunate. And I mean, to see what happened and why human beings would do this to fellow human beings, you wonder what goes through the minds of these people who commit such crimes. But this should just alert us. And I believe we also need, as a region, to begin to see these problems as not problems for Nigeria, for Togo, for Burkina, for Mali, or whatever, but collectively begin to act as ECOWAS and confront these issues. Because if we say we would insist on Mali or Burkina doing the best that they can to stem the tide, I wonder whether these countries by themselves will be able to confront the challenges that face them. And it's not actually a challenge for them, it's a challenge for all of us. And I've said before that it's time that collectively as ECOWAS, whether it is our security that come together to confront these challenges in the Sahel region, we have to do that. It appears that the international community, the US, Germany, Russia, and so on, are even on the front lines than, we, those who are affected by it. And I think that it's time we also demonstrate our own capacity to defend ourselves, rather than always looking up to the West when it comes to aid, when it comes to loans, when it comes to grants, and then when it comes to peace and security. Yes, we need their support in terms of their capacity, their intelligence, and all of that. But we should also demonstrate that we are standing up for ourselves. And it is time we look at it as a collective problem rather than looking at it as a problem confronting the countries that have so far been hit. I mean, otherwise, maybe very soon it will be our turn. We don't hope and pray for that. But the way things are going, no country is immune. And we need to take collective actions on these matters.
What is your take, though, on this next one? Public sector workers overpaid. And the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobina Enim, has said workers in the public sector are generally overpaid for work done. The government statistician said averagely public sector workers were paid double for their output. He has therefore called for the creation of a public productivity committee of Parliament to work like the Public Accounts Committee and ensure that ministries, departments and agencies and the public sector in general deliver output commensurate with their earnings. Here's my concern. We've also known over time how public sector workers, look at the increments in their wages, even in light of what we are facing, the economic challenges. 4%, 7%, when Article 71 office holders are getting wide boons. So where does it really lie? I do agree that in the public sector, there are a lot of people who just laze about at the ministries and other places, not doing much. But is this a fair reflection, do you think?
No, I suppose what he wanted to say is that public sector workers are not delivering, as opposed to saying that they are overpaid.
He says they are overpaid by twice. So maybe someone earning 3,000 should be earning about 1,500.
Yeah, I don't know what the basis is, because if you have employed somebody as a teacher or as a nurse or as a worker in the local government service, and the person doesn't report for work, the person comes to work and sleeps around, the person comes to work and just sit down chatting and all of that, on what basis do you say it's a question of the person not delivering, and so the person being paid for work not done. If that is the case, I think that I would say somehow yes, because I have had friends who have had to quit public service because they say, look, we go to work and there's really nothing to be done. We have also seen instances where state agencies that are not producing anything, and yet people continuously get employed. We have Tamawa Refinery. So when was the last time Tamawa Refinery refined any crude in this country? What is the capacity? How much are they refining? But go and look at the staff. And the president or the government appoints a managing director, deputy managing director, director of this, director of that, to go and manage what? So that's the reality. We create jobs for people, job for the boys, so that they get paid. And at the end of the day, no work is getting done, but they get paid because unemployment is on the high and people must have a living. But otherwise, to say that teachers who are earning 1,800, 2,000 in this current situation, where 2,000 is basically what? $250,
right,
and less than $300, and people are earning 2,000, and then we say they are being overpaid.
Yeah,
I think we need to be circumspect, and we need to sympathize with people.
We're moving on from that story, but he did say that earnings average in the public sector about 3,420 for the public sector worker, while output in the sector averages about 1,420 cedis, less than half the earnings. So that's what he puts out there. But of course, I know this discussion could go on forever, especially from public sector workers. But the Ghanaian Times, at Accra Extraordinary Summit, ECOWAS fails to slap new sanctions against 3 West Africa military rulers. We're talking here about Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali. There's also stop circulating video of children who suffer ill treatment and abuse. That story is on page 15. It's by Child Rights International. And of course, it has to do with a child who recently, whose father was going to use her for some rituals and all of that, an 11-year-old, and the talk about, a video being taken and images of such children being shown. And Child Rights International has been ferocious about this. National Security warns of suspicious movements at Garu, Bunkpurugu, notifies the Ghana Armed Forces and the police. Let's take a quick look at that, Sule. The Ministry of National Security has raised the alarm on the movement of suspicious persons along the mountainous areas in the Bunkpurugu Nankpanduri district in the northeast region. The same activity, according to the ministry, was ongoing at Garu district in the Upper East region. And the letter from the ministry stated that members of these groupings were aboard motorbikes and dressed in apparel covering their faces and seen heading towards the mountainous areas in the Garu district. And it was advising all security agencies to be on high alert to avert any possible breaches. Again, I'll ask, going back to the security situation, do you feel confident in our security apparatus? I mean, at least we have the intel. You see the National Security Ministry pointing to the fact that, hey, this is going on. Ghana Armed Forces, sit up and all of that. And at least it's also put us in the know publicly so that we can also see something if we do and say something. Your take?
Well, I think for me, the news or the story is really not the alert that has been put out by the National Security Ministry about these suspicious movements that we've all read about. We've all seen the statement on social media and so on. For me, the concern is how do these things get out into the public domain? Because I'll be extremely worried if these communication materials are actually intentionally put out there to the public. I suppose these are confidential matters.
Right.
If the national security is alerting the Ministry of Defense, the IGP about the activities of some suspicious people, and that happens to be a public document, then I'll be worried because how people may act. People in the Garu, Bunkpurugu, Nakpanduri areas, somebody could just dress in try to protect himself with some helmets, wear these kinds of dresses that sometimes we see people wear in Accra, so that in the event of an accident, they will be fine. And then people may just decide to attack them because they say, oh, there are suspicious people moving around.
Right.
Sitting
And
on
you even look at the other
motorbikes.
side, Suleimana. You look at the other side of the equation. Don't forget that these criminals, like they always do, or terrorists, they would also read. And so once they see that, oh, there's communication that maybe we're going to do something of this sort, they will advise themselves. They would know that eyes are on them. Do you get it? So
Exactly.
you're also letting the criminals or whatever, terrorists know that this is going on.
Yeah, and it is becoming a very worrying phenomenon. Whether it's a statement issued by the police about Boku, developments in Boku, and the steps that they are encouraging the regional police command to take in order to prevent something. Look, within a matter of a day or two, you would find the whole statement on a WhatsApp platform. The next time it will be national security talking about what is happening in the Hamile border area and the steps that have to be taken. And then within a matter of a day or two, you would find that in the public domain. So I think the problem is the insecurity of our security measures so far. The ones that we have to know, yes, like they convened this public forum and talked about see something, say something. That's a public campaign. But these ones that are supposed to be intelligence notices, alerts to the defense, interior, and other security agencies, and then we all get to know. That should tell us that there is a lot wrong about the management of these security issues in our country. And the earlier it is stopped, the better. If they are national security and putting out confidential statements cannot be a secret, then how secure are we? I think for me, that's really the problem.
Let's get into other stories quickly. The story in the Daily Guide, it's also replicated by the story in the Ghanaian Publisher newspaper. NDC kicks against Otumfuo lands, the 400 acres that we've been talking about, Otumfuo said to. And there's also Ghanaian Publisher, Minorities says no to land released to Otumfuo. Those two stories. And I don't know how much of it you've followed and what your quick thinking is. Very quickly on that.
Well, the story was initially published by the Fourth Estate, which is run by the Media Foundation for West Africa. And when I read it, I was quite disturbed. And I literally then concluded that, look, almost every state lands in this country originally belongs to a certain family or a certain stool or a certain kinship. And to the extent that the government has become so compassionate suddenly, and we are hearing about Achimota Forest, how many acres being released for the Owu family. And now we are hearing about the Ashanti region lands being released back to Otumfuo and all of that. Well, if the government has become so compassionate, then I believe that every other state lands must be reverted back to the original owners, so that we don't have state lands. Because why do you release to others and keep those of others? I think that in that way it would be an unfair way of going about things.
Right.
My worry is that this government is acting as if there is no future. This government is acting as if Ghana is coming to an end. I believe that if previous governments had done the same thing that this government is doing, maybe a time may come if we want a piece of land to construct any state facility, we may have to then break down people's private buildings in order to do that.
Suleimana,
it's a very worrying phenomenon.
Right. Let me just do this. BNFT says gold output hits 13-year low. South Africa overtakes country as leading producer in Africa. Republic Press, Ablakwa digs into cathedral project. And Economy Times, Ghana's balance of payments deficit widens. But this is what I want us to do. I'm going to interact with Joshua Asamoah, senior forecaster with the GMET, briefly. Suleimana, when I return to you for your summary comments, I want you to talk about these two matters. One, you remember that Lord Kenya song? Remember that song?
Yes.
Okay. So the chairman of the NPP, Freddie Wasimeu Blay, says Okafo Didi. So if we're investing 25 million in the National Cathedral, you say waiting. That's one. And secondly, we found out now, this is a story I know you have good interest in, the fourth estate letting us know that as far as assets declaration is concerned, the vice president, together with 90 ministers and deputy ministers of state, have not fully complied with the obligations when it comes to asset declaration. When I come to you, those two quick matters in maybe some 1.5, 2 minutes. But let me now interact with Joshua Asamoah, senior forecaster with the GMET. Joshua, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Pleasure having you. So we've been seeing the weather patterns in recent times. The rains have been hitting like they did yesterday. What can we expect today and moving on? Because the skies still are overcast.
Yes, actually today we are expecting some cloudiness to persist for the East Coast. And by East Coast, I mean the Volta to the Greater Accra regions and past few parts of the Central region. And we'll get some pockets of rainfall, but this will not be heavy rainfall. It will just be slight to moderate rain over the coastal parts. So we should expect some pockets of rainfall for the East Coast this morning. But later in the day, areas in the forest zone, so the eastern, the Ashanti, western north regions are expected to see some thunderstorms and rain activities.
Okay, but you've spoken about today and maybe moving on, but what can we expect in the next week or so? Yesterday, for example, I couldn't dry my stuff because I think it was the night before, the day before, leading into yesterday. I couldn't dry my stuff because of the weather. So what can people expect moving into the rest of the week?
Okay, so every week we issue a weekly forecast for the country, and that is done on Monday. So forecasters across the country will be gathering today via Zoom and then at the head office to come up with a forecast for the week. But before then, what I want us to know, especially for us in Greater Accra, is that it's likely we'll get some rains, like I said earlier today, but will not be too heavy rainfall, just some slight to moderate rain. But for midweek, it looks quite better. So we might get sunny conditions during midweek, that's Tuesday and Thursday. But it's also likely we'll get another rainfall towards the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. It's likely we'll get some rains coming in into southern Ghana. In fact, for most parts of the country, over the weekend looks quite good. But more details on that will be issued later when the weekly forecast is done. But this is the peak of the rainfall season for southern Ghana. And so around this time, it's very likely that we'll get around 2 rainy days within a week. There are some weeks when we'll have drier conditions within the whole week due to some dry spells that we expect within the rainfall season. But around this time, the peak of the rainfall season, every day is a possibility for rainfall.
All right, Joshua, we'll keep tabs on that, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Joshua Asamoah is a senior forecaster with the Ghana Meteorological Service, or the agency. Let me wrap with Suleimana Brahima now. So those two-pronged issues, and interesting that Vice President Bawumia, Finance Minister Oforiatta, we're talking about Senior Minister Osafo Mafo, Che Mensah Bonsu, Majority Leader, and others have not fully complied. Your quick take on that as we wrap, those two issues.
The declaration issue is a very widespread issue. Quite, dozens of our appointees who have failed to comply with what the law says. In the case of the Vice President and other senior appointees, as you said, they had done part of the declaration and did not fulfill other aspects in terms of when they were exiting power in the last elections, and then they need to have done it again. I think we need to take it quite seriously because it's one of the major mechanisms for dealing with corruption, which remains the major bane of our country. And so the appropriate institutions, SHRAJ, Parliament, and so on, need to begin to take serious actions on these matters so that people would comply with the law. On the cathedral, what can I say? I mean, I mentioned the last time that in a serious leader who wants to see the future of this country and would want to see prosperity for the future of this country, would not be committing us to this needless expenditure at this time. I can understand Freddie Blake when he says Okafo Didi. I think for some of these people these days, this is peanuts, or perhaps they don't even see what people are complaining about. When people say times are hard, they really don't feel it. They really don't see it. And so it's nothing for them. I just hope that one day we would get the kind of leader who would think about this country and would want to see this country prosper and would want to leave power.
Are you by implication saying that Akufo-Addo does not want to see this country prosper and is not the kind of leader we need?
Well, I have said it time and again that some of us really had high hopes in President Akufo-Addo. And I believe those who follow my public commentary over the years would agree that some of us really spoke so highly, so well of President Akufo-Addo when he was campaigning to become president of this country. And it's because we were experiencing governance that was not the best for this country under President Mahama. And unfortunately, President Akufo-Addo comes in, and I keep saying that we are seeing worse things happen. Because why would you, at this stage, people are suffering. Children, to maybe quote by Dr. Bawumia, children are suffering, teachers are suffering, parents are suffering, nurses are suffering, suffering everywhere. And the country is really under debt. And then we have a president who decides to pull down state buildings, which have been in place not too long ago, and then to commit state resources, millions of it, to say we are building a cathedral. For who? I don't think that even God will be happy with these actions that is happening. Sometimes one would say, oh, after all, he's a Muslim, but that's not the point. I mean, we live with Christians. I have more Christian friends than Muslims. I recruit people in my organization. In the organization, we are just about 2 Muslims out of almost 30 staff. So I have no biases towards any religion, but the right thing must be done. This is what do we really need it for? We were told it's a promise to his Lord. Well, Ghana's battle remains the Lord's, and I believe that battle that remains the Lord's is not the wasteful expenditure that we are seeing now, but that hopefully in the future we would see things getting done appropriately. And that is why collectively as a people, we need to express our dissatisfaction with the governance of this country over the period and not lower the bar so that somebody thinks that what we are saying about Akufo-Addo means that we are saying what was there was better. It wasn't better. We need leadership that will transform this country. And it is not what we experienced, and certainly not what we are experiencing now. Hopefully one day we would get the best for this country.
Sule, I love your guts and I love your patriotism. Thank you for being Ghanaian and not being a spectator. Thank you for joining us this morning, Sule, and do have a good day. Suleiman Abrahima there, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Quickly, a very happy birthday to you. Today marks another milestone in your life. Priscilla Oforiwa Kwe, today is your birthday. I wish you the very best and God bless you in everything you do. But up next, we serve you sports on the AM show. Stay.
Good morning. Welcome to AM Sports here with me, Muftau Onabila Ablai. The Black Stars of Ghana was held to a 1-1 stalemate by Central African Republic in their second game in the ongoing African Cup of Nations qualifiers. The senior national team opened the scoring courtesy of Kudus Mohammed before Carl grabbed the equalizer just before half-time, and the game ended 1-1 stalemate. Let's hear from head coach of the team, Auditor General, who has defended the lackluster performance of the Black Stars after the team became very complacent. He was questioned why the energy level of his players dropped in the course of the game. But To the Ghana Premier League now, where Kumasi Asante Kotoko, after winning the Ghana Premier League, have won again Great Olympics to put their hopes of finishing in the top 4 of the Ghana Premier League in limbo. The Porcupines grabbed the only goal courtesy of its striker, Frank Etuga Mbella, who scored his 21st goal. Our defending champions of the Ghana Premier League, Accra Hearts of Oak, they are struggling to make it into the top 4 of the competition after they lost 1-0 to relegation-threatened King Faisal. Thomas Partey, he has been installed as the development chief of his area. My colleague George Adejina was there and comes through with this report.
In view of your devotion to your profession and commitments to Ghana, the people of Manya Krobo, and indeed His Royal Majesty Nene Sakite II, bestow on you the enviable title of Mahefalo, the defender of the state. This day, June 3rd, 2022, at Konowem, Odumase Klobo. I go.
Good to have Thomas Partey, who is now a development chief in the Krubomanya traditional area. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel happy. At least, you have people who recognize your work, and it's not easy. I hope the youth, look up to this, and they get motivated, and they will be able to achieve what they want to achieve, and keep working hard.
And when you see the youth come to you, talk to you, they want to be inspired. I remember a year ago, we spoke about the Thomas Partey Foundation that is on. Do you feel more inspired to do more?
Yeah, it's always good, when you look back and you see people who, wanted to, get to where they want to be, and you have the power to assist them. I feel honored, I feel happy.
Thank you for staying with us. You're still live on the AM show. We get into our big story, starting with this first one, Accra floods. Now, the Auditor General's report paints a gory picture about the Hydrological Services Department. The Auditor General carried out an audit at the offices of the HSD in Accra and selected storm drains construction sites throughout the country between July and September 2020. It makes for interesting reading because over these 4 or 5 years, the report says the HSD did not produce drainage master plans to guide the coordinated development of drainage facilities. Now, during the audit period, 12.2 kilometers, that is 11% of the targeted 110 kilometers of drains was constructed, and none of the retention ponds targeted for 18 drainage basins had been done. The question is why? We'll break it down for you this morning as we host our guests. Engineer Abdullahi Mahama is a road consultant. Dr. Akshian Tarkwa is a road consultant as well, and Dr. Anthony Chumesi is a hydrologist, Kumasi Technical University. But before we get to them, how about what's right here behind me? So these are some succinct details about the report. And that's the performance audit report on the provision of flood control drains in Ghana. And look at that whopping sum, 117.7 million Ghana cedis. That is the amount pumped into the construction and maintenance of drains and culverts between 2015 and 2019. Now, when you look at that same report in terms of the construction of drains in the affected years, 2015 to 2019, in kilometers. Now, look, this is what was completed versus what the target was. So the target was 110 of these. But guess what happened? We only were able to get 12.2. Look at the difference in there. And again, that is sourced from the Auditor General's report. Now, in terms of the construction of retention ponds, and if you know anything about preventing flooding, you would know the use of retention ponds, areas designated for this. We completed nothing, zilch, zero. The target was 18. Let's go to the next slide and find out what more the Auditor General's report reveals. Now, other findings from that report. One, the Ministry of Works and Housing, which plays a crucial role in all of this, did not maintain completed and existing drains because maintenance was not prioritized. It was not a priority for the ministry. So that's the first point to note. The second point, each year from 2015 to 2019, the HSD significantly fell short of implementing their target of drainage facilities needed to mitigate flooding nationwide. No wonder we are where we are. So to the third and fourth points, now most construction works could not be completed due to the allocation of insufficient budget. Again, money matters coming to the fore to cover the planned length of drains, and the Ministry of Finance did not release funds on time to complete drainage projects, causing the projects to stall. Crucial points to take note of about why we are where we are. But let's look at the flooding impact, 2015 to 2019. Total recorded floods, we're looking at a whopping 1,446 in a matter of 4 years. You're looking at the injuries, those who have suffered injuries, 309 citizens, and then the deaths, 510. 510 lives lost within this period. We'll move on to the next slide for a bit more of a breakdown. When you look at the houses that have been inundated over the period, we're looking at 54,744, almost 55,000. You look at farmlands destroyed as a country with an agricultural backbone, 136,563. And that is the statistic in terms of houses and farmlands that have been destroyed. Again, we look at the number of people who have been affected since 1960. Some of you may have seen images from the Daily Graphic in 1960 talking about flooding. So between then and now, 4 million, over 4 million people have been affected, and about this 4 million number forms about 12% of our current population. That is how stark the situation is. And this is sourced from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Now, you also look at the economic damage that has been caused, and it is approaching a whopping $1 billion. In fact, it exceeds $780 million. We're looking at what? I mean, when you put this figure into cedis, off the top of my head, this would be approaching something around 5 to 6 billion cedis. And at least one major flood disaster has occurred every year over the past 10 years. So you're looking at the last 10-year period, and every year we have at least one major flood. How does that make any sense? But that is our situation here as a country. You also look at this. A quarter of the country is below sea level, a great cause for concern, and 60% of its people in flood risk areas. But the measures it has taken have reduced the likelihood of major flooding. But take note of that statistic. 60% of our people a quarter of the country is below sea level. That's the first part. So 1/4 below sea level. It means that if sea levels get to a certain point, most of these people are going to be affected, and 60% in flood risk areas. That is how stark the situation is. So, God forbid, if we were to have some of those, terrible situations like we see in other parts of the world, how would we fare? And our final bit, research shows that for every $1 spent on flood risk reduction, it saves, I'm talking about the HSD, at least $4 to $9 otherwise spent in emergency response when disaster occurs. So we have NADMO and the rest and all their work, and they're always complaining about logistics. But the point is that if we invested $1, would get the equivalent of $4 or $9 in what we could save from managing the disaster. This, Ghana 4, is where we find ourselves. So let's get into that discussion now with our guests. I'll take my seat and then we'll get into that discussion. Right, so we're hosting Engineer Abdullahi Mahama. He is a road consultant. We also have Dr. Anthony Chumesi, a hydrologist with the Kumasi Technical University, among others who are joining the conversation with us this morning. So let's get into the nitty-gritty now. And like I said, it makes for a very interesting reading, what exactly is happening. We also have Dr. Achian Tarkwa joining the conversation. But let me start with Engineer Abdullahi Mahama. When you look at the script, the tale of the tape, what we are seeing as far as the HSD is concerned, what we should have been doing, we are not doing. What is your initial analysis of this report by the Auditor General? Hello, Engineer Mahama, if you could unmute, we'd be grateful.
Right. Is it okay?
It's better now. I can hear you, sir.
Right. I'm saying a good morning to your cherished viewers.
Right.
I know it's not a pleasant good morning to those who are in Accra. Some of us have intentionally left Accra proper because of the indiscipline and lack of supervision. And so sadly, it will get to a time that a lot of people would have to relocate from Accra because of the challenges that will be faced. The news, I read the story, the report. In fact, the whole of the weekend I've been on the reports, and it's not encouraging, like you rightly said. The report is not encouraging. I wouldn't want to blame the Hydrological Service Department, which is an agency under the Works and Housing Ministry. So it is like how much money is given to the that ministry, and how much trickles down to the agencies underneath the ministry. You recall that I have been on this campaign for such a long time, and we are not giving up until when we are too fed up to stop one day. You look at the government approach, which I've always been emphasizing, that the report doesn't have, even if you're having issues in one particular sector, and your effort is under 15%, 1.5, you expect to have a different results? Absolutely not. If you look at the figures, we are churning out 117 million Ghana cedis for projects, and you have 102 kilometers of drains to be completed, and you do under 11%, or just approximately 11%. You don't expect to have a different result, especially when your population is growing that fast, when development is growing that fast. I mean, private development, and the government's aspect of catching up with the development is rather retrogressing in terms of progress or percentage-wise. Before I just forget, you made mention of a quarter of our land
yes,
being low-lying below the sea level.
Exactly.
Fortunately for us, like we've been saying all the time, Accra is, okay, yes, greater part of Accra is under the sea in terms of the level, but we are surrounded by a mountainous area. So in the event where we have the depletion of the ozone layer increasing with time, and we are not able to protect the shore of the land, as the sea, the shore from Axim to Aflao, and there's an ingress of water into the lands, at least right from McCarthy Hills through Pukwase and its environs to Ibri. It's hundreds of meters above the sea level. So we may be relieved from those who are beyond that, and some portions of Accra which will suddenly become islands because of the elevations. Like I've been saying, when I had an interview with you on the Glife, so we have two issues here. The flood is coming from more or less directly from the top, and we're having water from upstream coming downstream, which we are not controlling. And then the sea is also increasing because of the depletion of the ozone layer, so also encroaching or taking part of the land. We are being confronted with two scenarios in this case: the McCarthy Hills, the Pukwase, the Amasaman, the Brekuso, the Ibri, the Teman, Abukobi, Piduasi Ayimensa stretch, which brings a lot of runoff, flash floods to Accra. Immediately it rains. And then our sea is also encroaching, taking part of the land right from almost all the low-lying area. The Volta region is now been spared for the past few months, if not a year. And then the Gilife around Dansuman is also another issue that we are contending with. So we have a problem. And if we try to do a disjointed approach towards getting the problems resolved, this is where we're going to be. And I am very glad that Joy has a good record of almost every pronouncement that I've made over the past years. And like I said last 2 years, when I said that we are sinking money down the drain, it has come to pass. You are digging the Odo. When it has started raining, like the Auditor General said that monies are not released on time. In fact, in 2019, somewhere in April, that was when the then Minister for Sanitation, Cecilia Abinadapa, was giving 197 million Ghana cedis, including money for the silting of the Odo. April 9th, when we know that the rains have already come, we are now giving the sector minister money to start with the desilting. And I keep on saying that nobody carries silt. Let's be clear on this. The Odo is underperforming due to the volume of silt that has occupied the space. Now, if you have not done that one, the Odo itself is part of the buffer that you are talking about. Over 18 buffer areas have not been touched. Your water that runs onto the surface has increased because individuals are tiring their compounds with impunity. The laws are not quick enough to be amended to cater for the problem, the challenges that we are having in the country. As if we want to go by 1970 law, when the situation now demands amendment of current situations that we have in the country, where a bylaw could just be taken by almost all the assemblies that about 70% of your land, bare land within your compound, had to be grassed, so that we would have a lot of infiltration of the water. Government is not sending the bylaws, which is even easier for them to do without so much money. At the same time, they have not created the 18 identified or areas located to be used for the buffer, where you have, say, let's say you are receiving more than 20 million liters of water runoff. So the buffer area is a channel that you have to locate, as in knowing the higher elevation toward the lower elevation, and the waters are supposed to move in that direction to be stored, to be contained in the buffer, so that they don't overflow their banks immediately and then become like flash floods and then inundate the whole surface. So if you have identified 18, you expect about 20 million liters, as an example, 20 million liters of water. So your buffer is about 18, which can take more than 20 million liters of water. It means that there will not be that devastation when the waters come. Now, out of the 18, you have not done even one. And you want to say that because of the indiscipline of the individuals, like I said, you have surface waste on the Odo, but if 60-70% of the Odo is silted, you have to go to upstream and see what is happening upstream. And I'll keep on until this is education get to the listening ears of those who matter, the policymakers. All the other panels who are going to speak this morning, we are educating and enhancing the education to the populace so that they will be abreast with the information. But we cannot step in, backed by the constitution of the country, to take measures as to how to eliminate these bottlenecks or some of these issues which have been on our shelf for more than 20 years. In fact, if you look at the report, in 2018, one of the worst, I think from 2018, you look at the figures that you were channeling on your platform.
Right.
If you look at example, just one example, about the same reports. Let me look at this one. Construct primary storm drains. Target 20 kilometers. Actual 0.1. That's 100. You are talking about 20 kilometers, and you have done 0.1 actual.
Right.
In 2016, you are supposed to do 20 kilometers. You do 0.4. In 2017, you're supposed to do 30 targeted. You do 0. In 2018, you're supposed to do 20 kilometers. You did 1.3. In 2019, we're supposed to do 20 kilometers. And that's the only time that I saw quite a significant progress, which is 10.4. Out of the 110, you have done 12.2.
Right.
How do you expect that the floods will not inundate people and cause more devastation in Accra? That's the question we have to ask them.
All right. Engineer Mahama, hold for me. Let me also bring in Dr. Anthony Chumesi, who is a hydrologist at the Kumasi Technical University. It makes for even more stark reading as I go through other facts and figures concerning flooding, 1968 to 2011, and the fact that about 3.8 million Ghanaians, as of then, had been displaced, in terms of, flooding in our country. But we also know that there are natural factors, and then there are the anthropogenic factors like poor urban planning and all of that. But for you, if you look at the situation like we're painting, like the Auditor General's report paints, that from 1960 till now, this problem still festers. Doesn't make any sense to you?
Good morning to everybody. Good morning to the viewers and all those who are listening. The issue about flooding, to me, has been more of an hydrological problem, because most of the solutions have been engineering in nature. Why am I saying this? The main thrust of the flooding that we have had in this country has been the fact that we always think of designing drainage to suit the flood which may come. But do we think of the hydrology aspect of it? People just decide to do, engineers decide to go to the field. They may not be hydrology. They don't know the volume of water which might happen, and they don't know the runoff relationship. So what they tend to do is only to say that they're using some kind of formula to design a drainage system. This may not be the main thrust of the challenge that we have. The problem is that if we remove vegetative cover, if you don't plan properly, if we increase paved areas, definitely we are going to have a lot of water volumes coming out from after a certain rainfall. So what we need to do is, as a matter of fact, to look at what these personnel can help to come up with proper solutions. Look at even the way we design the drainage systems. Are we thinking about the various hydrological parameters? Do we think about the environmental issues? People just decide to put dispose solid waste into the gutters, the drainage systems. Are we able to go back to see whether that particular drainage system is able to contain the flood? Or what you do is that year out, you just come to see that there is a problem. And the problem, we discuss about it and then we go off. If we go to even the National Hydrological Service now, you can see that the leadership is more interested in something like the coastal defense works, and the hydrology is thrown to somewhere else. Nobody, if you go to regions, you'll be amazed to see that even in the regions, they don't have hydrologists in the regions. Virtually, there's nothing that is happening in terms of the hydrology aspect.
Break it down for us. Break it down for us, Doc. How relevant? What is the work of a hydrologist, and how relevant are you, especially in a country like ours where we are flood prone? Just in a very short period. Break it down for us so we have a perfect understanding.
Yeah. What I'm saying, I guess the hydrologist is supposed to know the movement of water through every system. He is somebody who knows how, after a rainfall, the processes that the water may go through before it goes back away to the atmosphere. He knows that when this amount of rainfall happens, this precipitation happens, he knows that if you take the infiltration amount of water which goes into the groundwater systems, he's able also to know that based on specific formula, he could know that this is the surface runoff that's going to happen. So he can decide based on the vegetation, based on every structure that happens, he can understand that this is the way that the water flooding can happen.
Okay.
So
now that you've clarified that, how many of you are in Ghana, so to speak? How many of you are practicing? Do you know?
I doubt if we are even up to about 10 now, because in this country, we don't train hydrologists per se. All students are trained as civil engineers, and they take maybe 2 hours per week to do maybe a 1-year program, and that's all. So they don't practice hydrology.
So that's,
those who are
that's a failure. That's a failure right there, right? In a country that has experienced the sort of flooding we've seen since independence, it means that we should have cast our mind to hydrologists. And you're saying there are no more than 10 of you in the country. It points to our failure as a country, doesn't it?
Oh yes. The reason is that, you see, that's something that if we decide to on this trajectory, that we don't even recognize the role of the hydrologists in this instance, I'm telling you, my brother, these things will bound to happen. And what we need to do now is that we must ensure that in all the hydrological setup, especially the Ghana Hydrological Service, they must train hydrologists to be part of all the aspects of the engineering regime in this country, especially in the regions.
So let's look at this. It's a very fair point you've made, and as a country, it appears we've not averted our minds to this. Hopefully, the authorities listening to us, and they do watch us, will now start focusing on that, and of course, also have systems here, because I feel it's a failure even in our educational system, such that we've not established courses. Like you say, you are not even trained in the country. For a country with a problem like ours, our tertiary educational systems should have had courses on hydrology. But let's move a notch from there. We know that per the Auditor General's report, the Hydrological Services Department has failed to come up with drainage master plans, or DMPs. We also know that as far as, retention ponds, and I'll be talking about them, the statistic, that's why I'm bringing this up. In terms of retention ponds, we know what they do in terms of surface water and how they help, mitigate flooding. But when you look at the Auditor General's report, what it evinces, you would see that when it comes to the construction of drains between 2015 and 2019, in kilometers, what was our target was 110 kilometers. We only succeeded in delivering 12.2. Then you look at the retention ponds I speak of. We targeted 18 and we delivered 0. So even where we have planned, there's nothing to write home about. How does that strike you?
Well, that is the pain. You see, that's what I was talking about, the current leadership at there. I remember when I joined this hydrological service in 1988, you used to have sections. You used to have sections. You have the coastal defense section, you have the drainage system section, and you have the operation hydrology section. So each of these sections were doing their work. Currently, as we sit, I doubt whether the drainage section is even working or the operation hydrology section is working. Most of the works has been the coastal defense works. And because we don't put so much emphasis on the drainage and the operation hydrology, that is the challenge that you are talking about. So for me, I think that the hierarchy of the hydrological service now must be seen to be going back to where we were at the time that I joined in 1988. And you see that at the time, I'm not saying that and during the time there was no flood. But each of these compartments had a role to play. And what they were doing was that if it comes to the drainage system, you have somebody who is in charge, somebody who is responsible. The person will be taking care of all the drainage aspect of the either in the city or the whole nation. And you have replica sections in the various regions. But as we sit now, if you go to even the commercial director service, there are only 3 personnel in the department. 3, and 2 of them are technicians. And there's only 1 engineer who even has gone on retirement, but because of don't have the personnel, he's helping the agency to work.
Wow.
And it cuts across the whole nation. So if you have such a regime, why wouldn't you have the challenges that we're having? Because when I joined and I was at a certain point, I was the head of the Kumasi office. We used to have about 10 personnel, more than sometimes some of them are going to the field to work, some are going to Sunyani, we had a lot of work to do. But now, there's nothing to write about.
So in other words, what you're saying, Doc, is that there is a clear lack of seriousness, in dealing with this problem.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And I was there last week. I went there to visit because some of them were all my juniors at the time that I was there working there. I nearly wept to see that this huge place that we used to have has turned to be like a ghost town. And the operation has even been gone completely, because we used to monitor all the urban waters. Okay, we were putting gauges to monitor. We were doing discharge measurements, and all these are not happening anymore. There's nothing. So if there's flood, you don't even know the type of water system which will take care of the flooding, because you don't monitor anything.
Right, Dr. Chumesi, do hold for me. Do hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. Achia Tarkwa, who is a road consultant. Dr. Tarkwa, can you hear me, sir? All right. So it appears we've lost Dr. Achia Tarkwa, but let me come back to Engineer Mahama. So I was about to pose that question to Dr. Tarkwa, but you fit the bill as well. No roads are constructed without drainage systems in any, properly thinking part of the world. I mean, but you look at our drainage systems, there were quite a number of problems. When you look at the Auditor General's report again, some points that are raised from 2015 to 2019, the HSD, the Hydrological Services Department, fell short of implementing their target of drainage facilities needed to mitigate flooding nationwide. That is my first point. The second one being that there is a shortage of allocation of funds. And then you would look again at the fact that the Ministry of Finance, time and again, does not release the funds on time. You were hinting at that concerning the Minister for Water, Sanitation and Water Resources, Cecilia Abnadapa. When you look at this mix, what picture does it paint? For Dr. Chumesi, he says there's a clear lack of seriousness. Is that the same feeling you have?
Well, I've been saying this over the years, so I'm not surprised that he's making the same comment. He is a hydrologist. I am a civil engineer with about 3 or 4 specialty areas, like materials, which has something to link with hydrology, because it has to do with percolation, soil type, the soil texture, which soil can take the water, which soil cannot take the water in terms of how long it will take for some water to seep through the ground. Clay is an example. If your area is dominated by clay, obviously you know that if it rains, no matter how dry the clay is, it will take some time before the clay would absorb the water because of the minute pore that it has. If you are dealing with a gravel area or a granular material, the infiltration of the water into the soil is much faster and higher. So if Accra, maybe a portion of Accra is predominant to be a clay land like Pram Pram, part of Accra, highly swampy material, the water would have been going down faster if it was granular material or weathered material. Now, almost all the roads that we construct in the country, like the ones that I participated in as a consultant and a supervisor, we have a hydrologist who is part of the team. Most of the team is about 8 or so professionals. There is a structural engineer when there are bridges and drainages or what we call culverts to be designed. There are drainage issues where the hydrologist is part of the team. We have the materials engineer. We have the highway engineer or the traffic engineer. We have the resident engineer who's supposed to supervise everything underneath him. So the water, as in the catchment area, the expected or anticipated water that is expected to be generated by the adjoining lands is also factored, especially, you see, the road design is not necessarily supposed to capture all water around it. When the road or the elevation is already higher, what we have what we call the direct watershed, the lands that are more lower than the road, they don't pose a danger to the highway. So the design is primarily to capture the water on the surface of the road, as in the carriageway, get it off the road into the drain, and look at the possible area for it to be discharged. The volume of water that is generated from the road is significantly low. But when you have high elevated lands around the road or along the road, then you have to look at how much volume of water you anticipate to get onto the road. And that would inform you about two factors: the water from the road, the water from the adjoining land, which are higher, into the drain and to be discharged to a location which is satisfactory or which has the capacity to take the anticipated or designed water. And so all these are factored. Now, I've said that when that is done, and let's say a road is completed, and first 2, 3, 4 years, the road is not flooding, and suddenly the road begins to flood, you have to ask yourself, what has caused the immediate or sudden change in the direction of the water flow? It could be that the assemblies must have given permit for buildings to be sited in areas to obstruct the flow of the water. And that is what we are beginning to see, that mostly roads which are highly elevated, higher than the adjoining land, do not create or cause any flood. Now, before my doctor rightly said, I haven't come across any hydrologists at the assembly, even though they also construct drains. There's no hydrologists that I've come across at the assembly. But we, the private consultants, if we don't have one, in most instances, we hire the service of a hydrologist because of the importance of the road that you are constructing, especially when the road is in a built-up area or is an area that you suspect by the experience and information you have that it may be creating or causing so much, a flood along the corridors of the road. So I see government hasn't taken so much holding the bull by the neck to ensure that we address this issue. One of the things you have to know is that when I visited the Hydrological Service Department in the year 2001 to do a lot of extensive studies about flood, the engineer then was Engineer Wise Ametepe, who had retired now. And he's now a consultant to the Western Housing Ministry. So to buttress what Doctor was saying, the man in Kumasi is also on retirement and is a consultant. That should tell you the lack of professionals that we have in that field. But because of our vested knowledge in our construction, both on roads and buildings and the flood mitigations or management, that is why we have gotten to this stage where we can speak with facts based on what we have done over the years. But we don't have them in this country. None of them are seen across the country in any of the districts I've visited, either as an unofficial member for meetings or to make inquiries. None is in all the assemblies that we have across the country.
Engineer Mahama, hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. Chumesi as well. You have criticized the lack of seriousness in this entire enterprise, but here is the cost of it in terms of the impact. We'll look at the actual cost, but how has it affected individuals? How has it affected farmlands and all of that? Just follow me with this statistic. According to the Auditor General's report, flooding just between 2015 and 2019, in terms of the total recorded floods, we are looking at 1,446, injuries 309, and deaths 510. You look at houses that have been inundated, 54,744, and then farmlands destroyed, 136,563. Stay with me here because I'm looking at a pattern. July 4, 1968, heavy rainfall. one of the worst at the time in 9 years, caused disaster. You would think that from 1964 to 2022, a lot would have changed. 71, the twin cities of Sekandi, Tarkwa affected. Houses were basically flooded, inundated, broke down. 1995, you see the trajectory. 1997, Accra floods. 1999, 2001, June 28th, one of the worst we've seen in Accra. You come to 2007, and the list just goes on and on and on. You go to the Upper West some years back, 1999, and this flood actually affected 300,000 people. So it begs the question, apart from our lack of so many resources, including hydrologists, do we even have the will to solve the problem? Do you see that? Hello, Dr. Chumesi.
May not be maybe like what you are suggesting, but it appears to be like that. Apparently, that's what, because as the engineer was saying, he is going to almost all districts. There's no senior hydrologist. And that shows that we are not up to the task. And more so, if this thing has been happening yearly, maybe every 2 years it happens, there should have been concrete ways to address the challenge. But it has not been there. There's completely lack of interest in addressing this challenge. It can't be permanent, as it has been like this since 1960. Or I was reading some document, even around 1968, in my area, there was a lot of flood. And up to now, we seem to be sitting down, waiting for that, oh, let's pray that it doesn't happen. But it happens all the time. So I think that the first point is that let's look at the hydrological issues, especially in terms of the hydrology of as the engineer was saying, they're engineers, the interest is that let's look at this formula, rational formula, let's do this, and then we come up to this solution. But that may not be the natural phenomenon that is occurring. It's the hydrologists who will come up with the proper the natural phenomenon, so that they can actually advise the engineer to say that, no, these volumes that you are using for your drainage system may not necessarily be so. Or you can even educate people that if you look at because rainfall and runoff are just like there's a relationship between them. So if you know the rainfall, hydrology will know the impact of the runoff which might come. And how much does it take in training hydrologists? In Africa here, I think even in Africa, there's an institute. If you go to the University of Nairobi, where I was also trained in the early 90s, I was trained in the University of Nairobi. Even now, they have programs that they can train hydrologists. Why are we not taking advantage of some of these things? That let's train a few people. Let's say that even the government service, you have even 10, so that one can be in any of the regions, or maybe 16. So that at least if they cannot be in the districts, they can be in the region, so that if each district wants a hydrologist, they can go and attend meetings as the engineer was suggesting. But I decided not to think through on that issue, because our interest is that it's engineering solution. It is not. It is not an engineering solution. It is more to do with the hydrology of the system. And I'm not government, but if you look at the way government has just been looking at the flood every year, NADMO will say that people have this, people have been, you go and pay, and after 3 months, you forget about that. If the hydrologist in this, nobody even thinks that you are important to come and speak on issues. For some time now, and except maybe JoyNews, who has even invited me, I think this is the second or the third time, to speak about some of these issues. Okay, no one cares.
So we only come to the problem when there is a problem. I mean, we're knee-jerk reacting people. When there is a problem, then we come, we make a lot of noise about it, and then, once the conversation dies down, those who are in authority who should be doing something also, go to sleep.
That's the thing. And that is a pain that if you look at, as you said, the cost of the flooding and even the cost of training, you see that there's a lot of disparity. If you take the people who are drowned, human beings cannot bring them back. If you take the houses which have gone, you cannot bring them back. We take the full security issues. If you look at the cost of all those, vis-a-vis the cost of training, even 10 hydrologists, it may be about 100 or 1 million of it is going to the training.
Right. And you're referencing where it talks about, I'll be going to Engineer Mahama now, but just to cap off, Dr. Chumesi, you are referencing what it says, that for every dollar that we spend in terms of flood risk reduction, we'll be saving between $4 and $9 when it comes to what we would spend on managing the disaster. So forestalling the disaster versus managing the disaster. And it makes for stark analysis. It appears when we're dealing with floods, in terms of this flooding situation, we are penny wise and pound foolish, because where we should be investing money, like having more hydrologists, like building systems, we're failing in that. But let me come to Engineer Mahama on this beat. If you followed what Dr. Chumesi said, it would also paint the picture. We have climate change. It means that things are going to get worse. There are going to be more climatic challenges moving forward. But then we also look at our response. I've just been taking a look at the United Nations Environmental Program and some of what more developed countries have been doing, from, managing rivers or water bodies, levees, reservoirs, vers, and all of that, and how they manage these in the developed world. It said that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. What are some of the things, best practices we can learn from whether neighboring countries or the developed world, so that we can mitigate the situation once and for all? Engineer Mahama, maybe you'd have to unmute so we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm saying that these are solutions that are always on the table of government. The Europeans did not learn any book, contract, or different from what we have learned. The same principle, same method, same approach is supposed to be adhered to. Before I just do that, Doctor was talking about the fact that it's not an engineering problem, but it's a hydrology problem. My only comment on that is that hydrologists are hydrological engineers, so they are part. So it's an engineering field to the hydrology, but they are hydrological engineers who are part of the design of any road or any landscape. So he is an hydrologist, but they are engineers. They are part of the engineering bracket. That's why they take their their professional certificate from the Institute of Engineering. So that's by the way. And secondly, I said in my the intro, that we are confronted with two challenges: upstream coming with their flash floods or the waters, and then the sea, where we are supposed to have some relief, is also coming up with the water, the rise of the sea levels, also eating our land, taking our land forcefully because of our approach towards getting the defense done. One of the things I want to quickly bring in is that now, because we are in Accra, that's why we are talking about Accra floods in particular. You made mention of Tarkwa and a few others. Koforidua, Kumasi, and by far almost all the regional capitals are flooding. That brings the question about one district, one dam. I don't see the sense in getting the northern part of the country to have droughts when we don't have the rains, and then we have floods when the rains come. That gives a question to myself and Dr. Chumesi to ask officialdom, what was the nature of the dams that were constructed or are being constructed in the northern region? Not only for farming, so in one way or the other, the one district, one dam is a pond. The 18 pond we are trying to do in Accra, in the northern regions, it's a pond which is supposed to serve one, to get the water to be stored there, in order for the water not to just inundate the environment or the lands. And secondly, when it's stored there, it is used for agricultural purposes. How come that these dams are constructed and within a matter of 3 months, 4 months after the rains, these dams go dry. And then we are waiting, first and foremost, the water coming from the skies. And secondly, when the Bagre Dam is filled to its capacity by the design that they have, they spill the water. And then we have two problems. One, the first one is the rain, which is natural. The second one, I'll call it artificial, because they have gotten the capacity that they want. And when they open to spill the water, the northern region is flooded.
It is no surprise, is it? Because recently I hosted a climate, concerned person, let me just put it that way, an activist who mentioned that even when you look at our dams across the country, I forget the statistic, but over 50% of them are flood prone. The dams themselves, I'm talking about the major dams we have in the country. That points to the very issue you're raising, which is problematic as well.
So let's say Dr. Chumesi and myself and a few others, and then the contractors under whichever department were asked or taxed were contracted and awarded contracts to handle over thousands of dams in the north. And these dams, most of them are dry. And there's nobody to be concerned that, apart from the fact that we are trying to do a policy of government, what is a bigger rationale behind the dams? Now, there are two things. One, I made some mention of something, but you are probably because you're not an engineer. I said that the texture of the soil determines the extent of infiltration of the water. Now, if you go to the whole northern part of the country, because this issue, let's start to body because it's not only Accra. Once we are, because of Accra's per capita income, the people we have in Accra, even though it's so devastating, the north or any other region with their low, in terms of, cash, when they have this impact, you cannot quantify that in terms of how it affects the people. Now, if you're going to do these dams in the northern regions, ostensibly to get water for irrigation purposes, and then these people are, they receive massive flood or they are affected by the floods, and then just after the floods, 2 months after, these dams dry up. There are two things involved. Now, what was the depth or the design of the dams? Were there any hydrologists like Dr. Chumesi added to almost all the designs who were done, or was there any what we call vetting of those designs? Because you need to get the terrain of the land, how the water is flowing. Some of them might be channeled artificially, how the history of the area where we have the floods, and whether there are no buildings there that it will be disadvantage for government because we have to do some demolition to create those buffer or dams in those locations.
Right.
In the event where those lands are fairly flat or they are bare,
right,
it means that you can only compensate for the parcel of land, but not buildings. Were they factored in the design? And secondly, when we met areas which were porous, as in the granular material, which we know that when the waters are captured within that area, within a matter of a month or two, because of the high infiltration, this water will all be taken underneath the ground. So was there any cladding of all this surface which are already porous, so that once the rains are done or they are gone, the water can be retained over a year? We need to ask questions with a bit of anger, that we need answers from whatever policy which is supposed to help the country, but it's less like a charade. It comes within the flash and it exits without anybody getting to know.
Right. Thank you for those very pointed comments. Let me bring in Dr. Chumesi to give your final comments on the way forward. I'm sure you'll be telling us that we definitely need more hydrologists. But as you do that, consider this. $780 million. That is what we have lost on the back of the economic damage of flooding. And in fact, over the last 10 years, every year we have experienced flooding. The $780 million I'm talking about is the equivalent of about 5.8 billion Ghana cedis, almost 6 billion. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that is also what we're looking at when it comes to the revised figures for the e-levy. So you see how big a problem this is. But for you, in just about a minute, if you can, Dr. Chumesi, what are the relevant things we should be looking at to solve this problem? Hello, Dr. Chumesi. Please unmute for me. Hello, Dr. Chumesi.
Yes, sir.
Right. Did you get the question?
Yeah, I got the question. And what I would suggest is that because now, if I'm going to talk about training, that's not the point now. You need to look at the environmental issues also. For example, this disposal of solid waste. I think there are even some management issues even on the solid waste system where people are going to. I think now we have some of these companies coming up who deal with this waste to energy issue, so that most of the solid waste that we try to dispose of, they may end up in factories for us to use them for some purposes. And also, like the engineer was saying, Samahama, what we need also to do is also to look at the facilities and government also commitment. We need to be asking questions, as he was saying, about what government is doing, so that we can also actually come up with proper solutions. And currently, if you come to Kumasi and other areas, you see all the vegetation is going, and even the wetlands, which are supposed to take care of these flooded waters, are also going away. You see people are. So we need to change this attitude of the urban planning aspect, so that we don't do what we are doing now. And then we also have to do a lot more studies on the rainfall patterns as respect to climate change, so that we can actually take care of these issues properly. But for now, I think the major issue will be to look at the planning, vegetative cover, drainage systems, and how we dump waste into the drainage systems, and education of the people to stop throwing waste into the environment. And then maybe each district must also look at how they can also come up with the help of the few hydrologists around, so that we can educate them and show them the way to address some of these challenges.
I just had to bring this in, and it's just a parting comment. I think it was Engineer Mahama that I heard some time back recently saying that when it comes to the flooding situation, what is contributed by people even dumping this or dumping that in drainage systems is just about 4 or 5% of the problem or less. Engineer Mahama, can you confirm that for me? Hello, Engineer Mahama. All right, it appears. Can you hear me now, Engineer Mahama?
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, we're done with the conversation. I was just saying, on the back of what Dr. Chumesi said about people not dumping, I think I heard you recently talking about the fact that even people dumping in or dumping, indiscriminately just contributes about 4 to 5% of the real problem. And that points to the fact that there's a major problem apart from people dumping in places they shouldn't, be dumping refuse and all of that. Is that correct?
Yes. I was specific with the odor itself.
All right.
I was dealing with the capacity of the odor, which is about 80% silted,
right,
which has reduced the capacity, and then the floating object on the surface of the odor, which is quite insignificant in terms of what is causing the incapacitation of the capacity of the odor to function as designed.
Gentlemen, we're immensely grateful that you took the time to join us this morning. Of course, we had Dr. Anthony Chumesi, hydrologist with the Kumasi Technical University, and he makes a stark point. We have just about 10 hydrologists in the country, a country that faces flooding year in, year out. And we don't even have systems to train hydrologists.
Do you have 1 second for us? Do you have 1 second for us?
All right, go ahead.
In the Auditor General's report, you realize that a lot of pictures were taken. And at most of the culverts where the outlet of the culverts are located, you will see a lot of service lines, GWCL lines, pipes, crossing at almost the centers of where we have the outlet of the culvert. And when those pipes are crossing horizontally, they become a block to the water. And any debris or any rubber or any grass or tree that comes out of the culvert is blocked there. That's why you have something we call localized and sectional flood. So Ghana Water Company and ECG, when they are doing, especially Ghana Water, when they are constructing their pipes across culvert areas, it's either they go underneath the base of the culvert or on top of the side of the window, so that they will not obstruct the water that comes with all the debris that goes across the culvert. That's very, very important.
Thank you for that point, Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, a road consultant there. It's interesting that he talks about water, because as we get into our second belt, that's exactly what we're going to be focusing on. We're talking about the Ghana Water Company Limited, among others, and the pollution to our water bodies on the back of illegal mining. What is the impact and how do we get out of this situation? Turbidity levels and more, and how difficult it is to even get potable water. That conversation will be up next, even as we take your views later on as we hit the streets of Kaneshie. Do stay with us.
Most people know that trees produce oxygen that we breathe and clean the air by acting as giant filters, removing harmful particles and pollutants. But you may not be aware that trees work just as hard to protect and purify our water sources. For the people of the Techima municipality and its adjoining communities, the Tano River has for centuries been the major source of drinking water for them. Sadly, however, the river is fast drying up as a result of human activities, leading to the felling of trees that provide protection for the Tano River. This development, according to the acting Bono East Regional EPA boss, Anthony Bright Kojodia, serves as a threat to the existence of the Tano River.
Clearly, as you can see, people are farming along the tunnel. And because people are farming along the tunnel, what is happening is that they expose the riparian buffer to a lot of dangers, which is promoting erosion. Beyond that, you can also see that along this particular structure, there have been the use of agrochemicals to particularly control the weeds. What do you realize? At the end of the day, all these things are washed into the river tunnel. And just looking ahead, you can realize that human settlements are not so far from here. And we anticipate that once human settlements are within the riparian zone, there's a possibility of illegal discharge of waste and other things. These are some of the issues or the land use activities within the riparian zone that we think serves as a threat to the Tano River.
With support from the Ghana NAS Limited, steps are however being taken by the Environmental Protection Agency to help save the situation. Safety, Health and Environment Manager of the Ghana NAS Limited, Michael Ohimin, says the move forms part of a major plan to help save the environment, particularly the Tano River.
Embarking on this project is something dear to us as a company. The director, Mr. Obed Asante, the general manager, Mr. Kojo Abuaje, are all into it. We came here ourselves to do some of the planting because we think helping to prevent the tunnel from going out is the main key to sustainability in the Chiman. We can see that the tunnel has a lot of biodiversity, and what is happening currently, people farming along the banks, we are going to have all the species within moving or even some going extinct. So Ghana has also helped and said, no, if there is an umbrella, if there is a big canopy that EPA has, why not run under it and also support in our small interest? So that's why we joined them to do these activities.
He however cautioned the general public, most especially farmers, to help in ensuring that trees being planted survive to save the river.
I can plead with the chiefs, I can plead with the people around to at least the riparian buffer should be protected. The trees we are planting, if they can take care of it, though we will be coming around to make sure that they don't die out, they should also help us so that we have these trees becoming a mini forest, at least to protect the Tano River from siltation.
As we mark the World Environment Day today, Anthony Dia appealed to all to help keep the Tano River by beating down plastic pollution.
The World Environment Day has its own slogan as what? The F, the only place that we can find ourselves. But the national celebration is we ensure that once we have one F, the only place, we must also ensure that we beat down plastic pollution. So we here are saying that no, Tano is our resource, and because Tano is our resource, let's put in all efforts now to ensure that we protect Tano to secure our future in line with the national celebration and global celebration.
Anna Sabit, Joy News, Techima.
Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. I'm Bernice Abubedu-Lansa. Earlier, you heard my colleague Benjamin Akako speaking to some specialists when it comes to the issue of flooding here in the country. We're still talking about water, this time though, not causing havoc to us, but the water that serves us possibly going extinct. As you may be aware, water is not an infinite resource. It is finite, and over time we've been encouraged to ensure that our activities do not lead us to a point where we don't have enough water to serve our communities. Well, joining me to have a conversation on how our activities are affecting water in the country is Ben Ampoma. He's former Executive Secretary of the Water Resources Commission. Thank you for your time here this morning, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So we just heard that report put together by one of my colleagues in the regions about how human activities is affecting the Tano River, a major source of water for people within that enclave. I'm sure you may have seen over the years how our activities talk about illegal mining, talk about the use of chemicals in our water and how it affects the quality of water that we have. How would you say we've performed? We just heard about our performance when it comes to dealing with flood issues. And according to the Auditor General's report, we are not doing so well. But let's come to the side of preserving the water that will serve us eventually. How well have we done in that regard?
Well, there's been quite a number of efforts in that regard. But it depends on the area and the issues that are at stake. Like you did mention, like the gentleman also did, there are quite a number of causes in terms of the destruction or the deterioration of our water resources. Of course, we're talking about pollution, which is one. Of course, there are different types of causes: illegal mining, improper disposal of waste, farming along a river bank, industrial discharges, which are not controlled. So there are quite a number of causes. But all in all, the basic thing that we have been able to do or have been able to do is to set the legal framework or the governance structure, which is very, very important. The institutions that are mandated to ensure that we actually put in place measures to control, illegal pollution or the destruction of our water bodies is fundamental and key. Then, of course, we have the issues of training and education, which I might say that the media has been very instrumental in forthcoming and helping in that regard. But all in all, the basic thing that we have not been able to, as it were, in my view, do much has to do with the element of enforcement. And in terms of the enforcement, I'm really looking at it in terms of the judiciary and how to penalize wrongdoers, especially given the legal regime, the fine, the penalties that go with them. That's not really serve as a deterrent now. So for me, that is the area that we need to work very much on.
So we have a challenge where you've mentioned there is lack of enforcement when it comes to the law, and people get away with a lot of things. Let me bring up the issue of a fight against illegal mining. At the time when it started, it appeared that there was a lot of commitment from government, from the media. There's a lot of focus. We even had a task force put in place to ensure that illegal mining was dealt with because it was having a lot of negative impact on our water. And the Ghana Water Company Limited was actually spending more to treat water to serve us than it would have if illegal mining didn't exist. So it appears everybody has gone to sleep. We are back to where we started from. There are reports that illegal mining has resumed in certain areas, and we still have the Ghana Water Company Limited struggling to treat water. In fact, we are told that the request to have our tariffs increased is partly due to that because they have to spend more treating water. From where you sit as the former Executive Secretary of the Water Resources Commission, have we shown that we really appreciate the essence of water and the fact that it is not finite? And if we are not careful, in fact, we've said in times past that we may start importing water. Do we understand how dire the situation is?
As a country, it depends on who actually, understand or appreciate the essence of water. Of course, we have the pollutants, and we have those who are supposed to do that.
Sorry, Mr. Mpoma, I'm struggling to hear you. Can you please speak up a bit?
Okay. What I'm saying is that as a country, it is not as if we are not being putting in place or we do not appreciate the essence of water. We do. But the point has to do with how to sustain the measures that we actually put in place here. How do we sustain them? How do we integrate them? There is no one measure that can solve them. How do we integrate them to ensure that at least we have people using water as a form of livelihood? Water is supposed to be used for development. We should understand that. Okay. And water is supposed to be used for various purposes for our human existence. We should understand that. So, for instance, we cannot say that we should not mine. Yes, we should mine because, and if we talk about mining, for instance, water is the major input or the major input in terms of, so there's no doubt about that. But how to ensure that we use it in a sustainable manner is the craft of the matter. And again, I would emphasize that there is no one measure that we can use with respect to tackling the issue at stake. There's we have to look at it from all angles. Data, governance, the technology, the technological aspects, and all that kind of things. How do we?
Hello?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, please.
So how do we, make sure that we do all these things sustainable? For me, that is the issue. Sometimes we tend to be making progress, and I agree with you to some extent that we tend to be making progress, and then somehow, we tend to some measures do not work. How do we tweak it to make sure that we get it done? But all in all, we need to get a dedicated way of doing it.
Mr. Mpoma, let me bring in Mr. Stanley Partey. He is Director of Communications at the GL. Good morning, Mr. Partey. Thank you so much for the program. Hello? Hello, Mr. Partey.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Benison. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining the program. We are back again talking about water, this time around, not with regards to tariffs, but with regards to the quality of water and whether or not, as a people, we understand the importance of not allowing our activities to interfere with nature as we have it. From where you sit, treating water every day, would you say, I mean, even if it's the slightest of improvement, let us know. Have you seen any improvement at all in the quality of water you treat before you serve us since our fight against illegal mining started?
Okay, let me assure the entire public of Ghana that any water that flows through our taps meets the best of standards. So before it leaves our treatment plant, then it means that it has attained the Ghana Standards Authority's drinking water standards and that of the WHO drinking water standards. And I always say, and I must say again, that the Ghana Standards Authority's standards is far higher than WHO. And as a company, we ensure that we even do better than the Ghana Standards Authority standards for drinking water. So the water that flows through our pipelines meet the best of standards. In any case, we are seriously challenged with the pollution of our water bodies, as we've been saying all along, and Dr. Benampuma has also been saying. And it is such that we do our best to treat it to meet the standards that I've just mentioned. But if at a point we are unable to meet the standard, it means that the water has reached an untreatable stage, and then we shut down the treatment plant. So there's been several occasions where we have had to shut down our treatment plant because we can't treat the water to meet the standards for drinking.
Mr. Martin, I just want to know what you mean when you say untreatable stage. What do you mean? I mean, what in the water makes you determine that it has reached an untreatable stage?
Okay, so even with raw water that is clear, there could be some compounds that we can't see with the naked eye. Okay, and all those things will have to be cleared before it is sent out for consumption. So you can imagine the sort of water that you are showing on the screen now, highly colored. Okay, so that one you can even see with the physical eye that is not good for it can't be consumed. So there are a lot of compounds in water. And in the treatment process, we need to get rid of all of them. In the process of getting rid of all these compounds and all these whatever unwanted pathogens or enzymes or whatever bacteriological stuff that we need to get out of them, if in the process of treating the water, what happens is that we lose some of the water because of this death. So we add some chemicals, it will coagulate all the filth and everything, and then we'll have to dislodge. So there are process losses in the course of treating water. Now, if your process losses go beyond 50 to 60%, then it is not even economically prudent for you to treat the water, because it means that you'll be using a lot of chemicals and you'll be using energy to abstract the water, and you have to lose a chunk of the water. So beyond that limit, it means that it is not feasible for us to waste our time and energy and everything to treat the water. So we'll stop at that point. There are certain times where even separate the filth from the water, it's impossible. Okay, at that point, we can't treat the water, or it is not feasible or economically prudent for us to treat the water. So at that point, we'll shut down the treatment plant. So there are standard operating procedures that we use, and based on the limits within the SOPs, we shut down the plant. And it has happened several times. And we've been telling the general public that if it goes that way for a very long time, we'll have our treatment plant there, but we can't treat the water. This year, we have had to shut down the Boise for well over a month, and Secondary Tarkwa was without water. There's been several times when we had to shut down our Bosu treatment plant and our Konogo treatment plant and other treatment plants within the country. Or Tasu in Obuasi. I mean, these are just a few of the treatment plants that I can mention for now. But it happens all the time, educating the general public. But it's like we can't stop them.
Mr. Mate, so I was finding out from you, since we started the fight against illegal mining, would you say that you have seen any improvement in the water that you have to treat?
That is so now you are talking about the raw water quality.
Exactly.
Anytime, for instance, when we had Galamstock, and then when we had the media also get involved, or anytime we get external people to support the fight against Galamsey, it ceases for a while and we see improvement. But anytime we go to rest, then it happens again. The Ghana Water Company Limited, for the past 15 years, has never relented in any way in fighting the menace. Unfortunately, we do not have the capacity to meet them good for good. So what happens is they will come us and we are forced to withdraw. The mandate is for law enforcement agencies to do, but is it sustainable? So between us and the Water Resources Commission, we resort to educating the people and empowering, no, don't let me use the word empower, but like making the indigenes understand that apart from affecting the water bodies that we all need to treat and to consume, it is also affecting their domestic economy. So we all must fight against the menace.
So have you seen an improvement or not?
Currently, there isn't. But like I said, anytime there's a real fight, we see improvement. Okay. Which means that if we are able to sustain the fight, then it means that we'll see quality in the improvement of our raw water.
In 2007, we drafted a national water policy. And I just want to find out from you, since that time in 2007, have we revised the policy, or we are still trying to implement what is contained in that document?
Yeah, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources are in the process of doing that. And I'm sure within a very short time, we'll come out with a revised version of the water policy.
Interesting. So before you joined the program, I was mentioning that one of the reasons given for the increase in tariffs, the request to have water tariffs increased, had to do with the cost of production, and the quality of water you have to treat is also part of that problem. If you can just tell us where we are now with regards to the issue of tariffs. We know that the PURC went through a certain process, but do you have any indication that your request is going to be met?
For now, we can't tell, but we are still in the process of engaging with our stakeholders. Last week, we were in the Volta region, and in the past 1 month, we've been meeting all stakeholders, and the TUC, the parliamentarians, even beauticians and hairdressers and barbering association. I mean, all associations and all the stakeholders that we can think of. We have been meeting with them. This week we'll be in the Volta region, and then next week we'll be in the Ashanti and then the northern regions. We are hopeful that we'll finish before the beginning of July, and then PURC has promised to announce around that time. So we are just hoping to hear from them. But for now, we can't say anything at all. There hasn't been any indication whether it will be granted or not. Maybe the PURC will be in the best position to do that.
Mr. Partey, earlier in the show, we were discussing the impact of floods. I'm just wondering if floods in any way affect the job that you do in providing potable water to Ghanaians.
For now, okay, I'll say that when there are floods, we get our raw water becoming more turbid. So maybe it affects us that way. But we haven't had any flooding that could, let's say, affect our pumps and all that. I think 3 years ago, we had some flooding in the Upper West region, in our Jambuzi water treatment plant, where our treatment plant got flooded, and then we lost some property. But we have worked on that one, and since that time, it hasn't occurred again. But that is the only challenge that we've had, if I've answered the question very well. But if it's the treatment process, it means the only challenge, the fact that when they are flooding, we get high turbidity water, which makes treatment expensive.
Engineer Mahama spoke earlier to my colleague Benjamin Akakpo, and well, let me just maybe term it a bit of advice for the Ghana Water Company Limited, and he was mentioning how your pipes are laid across the cities, and sometimes there are concerns that it goes across the drains, and so when there's flood and the filth and the plastic waste is moving along with the flow of the water, it gets trapped in the pipes, and then it causes a bit of an obstruction to the flow of water. Let me just find out from you, do you have any of such pipes damaged as a result of the flooding? And apart from that, do you also receive complaints about how these pipes affect people or residents living in the various communities when it comes to the flow of flood waters?
Okay, so when it comes to our main pipelines, let's say our distribution pipelines and our transmission pipelines, if it has to cross, let's say, some river or some water body, what we do is to have a panel by the bridge or by a panel, and then create a bridge for the pipeline to be on. So it doesn't really affect it like that. And where we have some challenges is when people lay shallow service lines into their homes. Now, we are supposed to go to a certain depth when we are laying pipelines, our service pipelines. But when people do illegal connections, they do not go that depth. And then anytime we have erosion, it washes away some of these small service pipelines. So that is where we have a bit of challenge. So what we do is that after every rains, we get our people within their communities to check and to let everybody know that if there's any thing of the sort within your community, report to us, and then we'll have it rectified immediately. But we don't have a lot of these things occurring, but they are bound to happen. And when they do happen, we have them fixed immediately and then give them the right depth so that it doesn't reoccur. So erosion really affects us, and erosion only occurs when we have set flooding and heavy rains.
I'll be speaking to another panelist on the program now, but let me just find out from you, apart from having mud and chemicals in water, do you have a challenge with plastic waste also?
Yes, for instance, currently the sea is polluted. And we abstract the sea for treatment as well. So we are faced with that challenge where almost every week or every 2 weeks, the desalination plant will have to shut down for a day or two to get rid of the debris that may have blocked the abstraction line. So we are faced with that challenge in the sea. It is strange, isn't it? But if you drive along the coast of Accra, you realize that the sea is polluted with plastic bags and plastic bottles. It is also occurring in some areas like in Sawam, because a lot of people dump into the water body, and then it affects us at our extraction point. The other aspect is also industrial effluent. And let me also say this, that every drain in this country ends up in a water body or in the sea, or in the water body and then eventually into the sea. So when people throw refuse from their homes, garbage and stuff into drains because it is raining, they should know that it will end up in our water bodies, which will affect us when we have to treat. So it really affects us. But I've mentioned the sea because it is strange. If you look at the size of the sea and we are able to pollute it in Ghana, then we have a serious challenge. And I think we all need to do that education so that citizens of Ghana will desist from such antisocial behavior.
Let me bring in Dr. Dixon Amwakukisi. He's MP for Anyaso Tom and Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Water and Sanitation. Good to have you here. The Parliamentary Select Committee on Environment, rather. Thank you for your time here, sir. Now, we've been hearing from Mr. Ben Ampoma, who is former Executive Secretary, Water Resources Commission, and Mr. Stanley Partey on the challenge we have in this country when it comes to water and having access to potable water. For Mr. Ben Ampoma, he thinks that our laws aren't being enforced properly. From where you sit as a legislator, and also the Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Environment, would you agree that we aren't doing enough when it comes to the legal aspect, the enforcement of the law aspect with regards to people who pollute our waters?
It's Atomako.
Yes, sir.
Atomako, yes. And then one key thing, I think this week is also World Oceans Day, which makes this topic very appropriate. With law enforcement, there's a very huge aspect of awareness and making sure that people understand the law. And I think we cannot just look at it from, giving fines or tickets or arresting. We also need to look at it from the other aspect of mass education of the public. And need I say, constant reminders. Unfortunately, we're a country where basically a lot of our laws are in the books, but not as it is implemented or enforced. And the awareness is also not, very strong. And I would hope that as we do this, we embark on that journey of reminding and retraining or informing our citizenry. And I'll use this as a legislative person to say that our laws are only as good as we practice them. So if we're not practicing the laws as in enforcing or educating the citizenry, then it's not as effective.
Let's put the two on a scale. Educating and enforcement. Would you say we have balanced these two enough?
Not enough. Not enough.
So where would you say which side would you say the pendulum swings more to, education or enforcement?
I believe largely in education, because that can alter people's behavior, and that is where in economics we say nudging, and that gives us a better outcome when people actually understand the implications, the negative impact of what they are doing. I think when we do that, without a law enforcement person there, individuals will know that they have to act right. It's almost like us saying that, a thief looks all over and forgets to look up, as in look up to God, you understand? So the eyes will not always be there. The enforcement team will not necessarily always be there. But when a driver knows that if he goes through a red light, he's likely to get into an accident, he is more likely to, stay when it is red. I hope you get where I'm coming from.
I'm happy you brought in this example of road safety, because clearly in this country, it appears to be the opposite. Because we focus more on education, yet we are not seeing a change in behavior. And that's why I was asking you where the pendulum swings most to and what the situation should rather be. Because you talk about road accidents, and I sit here every day, we go through the statistics, we do the education. You still don't see a change in behavior. It's the same with water, talking about illegal mining and how it affects us as a...
But the thing is, mercury in our water systems, half of the people using mercury are clueless as to the impact on their own lives, and let me just say this. In my interviews with some of the people who handle mercury, one, they even doubt the education you're giving them because of they don't have that grounding. And it's very painful. I mean, when you sit with a young man who plays with mercury doing mining and you try to explain to them the implications and they just can't appreciate it, whether in local dialect or in English or any dialect they understand. And what it means is that we still need to do more. I mean, you put yourself in a classroom as a teacher, you teach your students, they are not getting it, you have to teach them again, they are not getting it. If you resort to just lashing them, that is not the best solution. But it is important. Some people wake up after a lash. And what it is that some people wake up when the fines are working, when the appropriate judgments are made. And we need the two, but I'm more inclined to believe that a lot of people are ignoramus. They are very ignorant about the implications. The fact that when you dump things into the water body, you are the same individual who's going to drink from that water. And the fact that...
Doc, sorry to interject again. So the example you gave of a student in the classroom and what we are talking about now aren't entirely the same, are they? Because for a student who is sitting in the classroom, the repercussion of their action or they not understanding the subjects that the teacher is teaching may not necessarily have direct impact on other persons in the classroom. But you think about the person who is putting mercury into our water bodies and how it's going to affect all of us. The person who is dumping rubbish in the drain while it's raining and how it's going to affect all of us. So I clearly get your point about education and enforcement. But what I'm finding out from you is that do you think we have even done enough when it comes to enforcement, and whether experiences over time haven't taught us that education doesn't seem to solve our problems as we would want it to?
We can up the the fines. It's also very important. But I think I'm being a bit less patronistic, in the sense that I think that unfortunately the average citizens' understanding of the impact or implications are quite low. And it's just unfortunate. Elsewhere you have people championing recycling. Elsewhere you have ordinary citizens championing, water quality related initiatives. And may I add that this challenge is not necessarily only a governmental thing. And I would encourage many more people to take it up on their own, to educate landlord associations and all kinds of groupings in this country, so that this practice of dumping into drains, which is quite sickening. I've seen videos, I've seen stories, is quite sickening, and I don't know where we copied this habit from. And the painful thing is, it's not plantain that they are putting in, it's things that are not biodegradable to begin with, and it ends up choking downstream and still affecting them either way. So another key thing is how we develop or plan our cities. Because yesterday I had a heated argument about the fact that elsewhere you don't even see the drain to let alone put in something. Everything is covered. You understand? So from a city planning standpoint, if the human beings are still behaving like animals, forgive me, then those who plan the city, we ought to work or design a city whereby drains are all covered and people don't have direct access to drains to dump into them. It's ridiculous, but our behavior sometimes need to inform those who make the planning, and I think that until we get our planning right, per the kind of human beings we have in our country, and how we think and how we rationalize, I think ultimately we ought to plan our cities well and have covered drains, and I don't think anybody will go necessarily, break the covering to dumping. Then that will be a serious offense that may warrant 5 years imprisonment. You understand? So I really think that ultimately, if the people are not behaving appropriately, then we need to map out a different strategy of planning well so that people don't dump. Once it's covered, they cannot dump. And these are some of the things that, as a nation, we need to take on boldly and revisit how we've done our engineering in the city. So that is my 2 cents with regards to this.
Okay, so yesterday was World Environment Day, and the theme was
One Earth.
Only One Earth. And I mean, it really hit me just getting onto the UN's website and the little write-up they have under that theme. And I'm going to read it because it leaves a lot to think about. In the universe are billions of galaxies. In our galaxy are billions of planets. But there is only one Earth. Let's take care of it. Let me come to you, Mr. Ben Ampoma, because we appear to be a nation of advocacy. We like advocating things a lot. So we've just had the MP say, oh, we need to do something about our structures. We don't need to have open drains. But I'm asking myself, beyond the talk, what can we do? Can we have a law that says, for example, if any civil engineer or if any body belonging to a local assembly oversees a project that doesn't have a covered drain, there should be something done to them? Or can we take it beyond the advocacy and education?
Just before I respond, can you let me make a conversation with Stanley on the matter of flood affecting...
Sure. Go ahead, sir. Sir.
Yeah, I want to stress that particular point, that we normally seem to miss the fact that flooding does not occur only in the urban center or urban cities, and that it also affects our rural communities and small towns. So if you take water supply, we have our point source systems, boreholes, and then small town community systems. And indeed, flooding affects some of these water supply systems in these areas. And indeed, because of that, they don't use their point sources like facilities like boreholes, small underground, and small town systems that have been put in place. So I just wanted to draw our minds to that. And indeed, one of the solutions that, in my view, and somewhere have been done, is to develop what we call the flood early warning risk maps, or flood risk map, to, as it were, map out areas within the country where we have potential risk in terms of flooding. And based on that, it will inform our spatial planning and also how we actually, site our infrastructure, especially with regards to water supply. That is the point that I wanted to make. Now, to come back to your question, that can we go beyond the issue of advocacy? Yes, we can. And like I did mention, there's no one solution. We can never have one solution. We should have an in terms of an integrated way. One other thing, in terms of governance, how institutions will work, collaboration is quite important. We should not have, what somebody would call silos. We shouldn't be working in silos. Institutions, it has to be EPA, it has to do with the media, it has to do with the school systems, education, the judiciary, whatever. We should work in an integrated and collaborative manner and not work in silos. Otherwise, it will never work. And again, we should also be mindful of our traditional system and some of these practices that hitherto were quite okay. They were good. They were not put in place just for the matter of it, but they were able to shape our opinion and the way that we treat our natural resources, be it water, be it oil.
Hello, Mr. Ampoma.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, much better now.
Yeah, that's right. So, in my some of the practices either should be near to our benefit in terms of how we. All in all, I would say we should look at it in an integrated manner. We should work in a collaborative and coordinated manner, all institutions, and that all the measures that we put in place, we should do it that way moving forward.
Thank you so much for your time. Mr. Benampoma is former Executive Secretary of the Water Resources Commission. And I'll just take your final words, Mr. Stanley Marte. I'll come back to you later, Dr. Dixon Atumakukusi. But let me take your final words, Mr. Stanley Marte. He's Director of Communications at the Ghana Water Company Limited. I always like to say this because without sounding alarmist, it appears that in this country, we have a lot of conversations about things, but see very little results at the end. How confident are you that in a year's time, when we are talking about World Environment Day, we would be talking about progress instead of coming back to the same old problems that have existed since Adam, really?
That has always been my prayer. But unfortunately, we get back to the same thing. Let me cite an example. Every year we've been talking about people living downstream the Wager Dam and the challenges that the flooding poses to them. And our expectation is that after they face all the dangers, they will evacuate the area and never come back. But it is strange that they rather put up more structures year on. And so I'm wondering, we've been talking about the municipal assembly ensuring that building permits are not given or people are not allowed to even build within the buffer zone for the course of the river. But we still see new structures springing up every time. So I'm wondering whether this can either materialize. And I only pray that we'll be talking about progress rather than going back to the same issues over and over again. Last year and then last 2 years, I told a few media men that I'm not sure I'll be talking about the wager issues again because I don't know how to describe the situation. I don't know what I can say again. I don't know anything new that can add to what I've been adding. And so this year, I've actually refused to speak about that issue. And so I hope that they will learn what they have to learn and then desist from that attitude. And same goes to all of us. We need to be thinking about progress other than going back to complaints every time and then thinking about what we can do and we try and it doesn't work, or we try and then the same recalcitrant people go around the issues and give us more challenges. We need a sustainable solution to the problem. Maybe this year we should give ourselves the opportunity to come out with a strategy that must be a final one, and then we continue with it. But we have tried almost everything and it is not working. And if, for instance, we've had a workable solution, but we haven't implemented it effectively, maybe we need to do it this time so that we will not go back to the same issues again. We have told the general public that with the tariff proposals that we have given out this year, all things being equal, that proposal is accepted. Between 2026 and 2030, we should be able to have 100% access to water in Ghana. But if the proposal is given, okay, and we do whatever is expected of us so that we could have 100% access, but then the raw water is unavailable, then it means that we're back to square one. And if we really want us to have, if we really wish that we're going to have 100% access to water in Ghana, then one major aspect of the equation should be the management of our water bodies. Now, one other aspect is that our tariffs are also going up mainly because of the cost of production. And the cost of production is high as a result of the very bad quality raw water that we have. So if we are able to manage our water bodies very well, then we could have a lower cost of production, which will impact positively on our tariff. So we also have to look at that as well, so that if we manage our water bodies very well, we're getting more water into the system, and then not only getting more water, but at a lower cost because the tariff will be lower. So I really wish all of us well, and we have to take some of these things seriously. Other than that, posterity will never forgive us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Director of Communications at the GWCL, Stanley Partey. Let's end this conversation with you, Dr. Dixon Atumakukusi. You are Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Committee of Environment. And I'd just like us to end on one of the points raised by Mr. Partey, which has to do with the Weja situation. And yesterday, I know people, my producer had to stay in traffic for about 4 hours. Beyond those who live in the area that will be flooded when the dam is spilled, there's a general flooding situation in that area. We know if you cross Weja moving into Kasfa, those who live on the ridge, there have been cracks. There are concerns of a possible landslide or a possible disaster occurring. But we still see the people there, they're still buildings springing up. You are with the Environment Committee. Is this on your table at all? Is it something you're looking at? If not, once you've heard it on this platform, what can you do to ensure that we don't have a situation on our hands in the coming days? Hello, Doc.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes. In all of these discussions and conversations, there's one key thing that is missing out. One, the climate change is upon all of us. And if you check carefully, the volumes of water coming down has increased. I mean, we've all been in Accra, and this time round, the frequency, the duration, and the volumes are increasing. And in as much as this is happening, and we are vulnerable because of our, poor state in terms of infrastructure, we need to really take this serious. We'll be much, much impacted by climate change than the average Western nation. Speaking of Weja is very close to my constituency, and I have first-hand experience in terms of the flooding on that stretch leading up to Kaswa, and it is serious. I think that all drivers, need to be mindful once it starts raining, not to even make an attempt to drive that path. I really think that should be one of the things we need to signal, that people do not attempt. Many cars have actually been broken down by the fact that they go through a huge volume of water. Yes, environmental is very related, and that goes into the domain of EPA, because as you well are aware, EPA approves, are supposed to, do the appropriate thing and approve whether the siting of a property is appropriate in terms of the protection of land and also protection of property and humans. And I think that the EPA arm of government, or shall I say the EPA agency, needs to be emboldened and as it is supported in executing their mandate in terms of helping with the approval for building permit. And you are right when you talk about the constant flooding of the Weja path, and I think that huge drains, not the kind of drains we see currently, will help us. It's almost like a river, a path of a river, and we're using very small, narrow gutters to solve this problem. And I really think that as a nation, we need to address this, and it will need heavy investment, not the feeder road, urban road type of investment. We're talking about a heavy drain storm, project, which are well in the millions of euros to really solve the Weja floods, or shall I say the Kaswa.
So looking at the situation, the siting of buildings causing the environment, what will your committee be doing in terms of writing to the appropriate quarters on what should be done as a matter of urgency?
Well, I'm with the president on his point that people who build in waterways ought to be evacuated and the buildings brought down. And I really think that the president is very right about that. And the enforcement bit, the municipal chief executives or district chief executives need to take that bold step and make sure that, one, we're not adding on to the number of houses in waterways. Two, we are clearing houses, offices, or structures that are in waterways.
And if they fail to do that?
If they fail to do that, I mean, I think the president was very clear that if he finds out that you are not taking the necessary actions, he is much obliged to withdraw you as a municipal chief executive. And I think and know that he's very strong and firm about this. And I'm sure, who knows, in the next foreseeable weeks, one of our municipal heads might be an example, for others to know that the president is very serious, because he was very, very serious and very, very upset about the current situation.
I appreciate your time this morning, Dr. Dixon Adumaku-Kissy is MP for Anyaso Tum and Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Environment. And, well, I'd just like to pause here for us all to think about 20, 30 years from now, what it will be like in Ghana when we talk about water on both fronts, on the flooding front and on access to potable water. Will we be proud of the actions we've taken today? Or would we wish that we had done something earlier? Think about that 18-year-old girl who lost her life yesterday when her slipper fell in the drain and she was picking it up. She was swept away and she died. Think about that other one who was electrocuted about a week ago when there was also flooding in Accra. Think about the many lives that have been lost due to floods in this country. It could be anybody. This is an emergency, and we all need to be upset about the situation until we see a change. Well, talking about water, we all know it's life, right? It regulates our body temperature, keeps us alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes us better. Well, there's the perfect size for every occasion, the 330, 500 ml to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. We have also introduced a special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now, you just need to stay awake with Awake Purified drinking water wherever you go. Come on, grab a bottle of Awake water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified drinking water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's produced by Kasapreko. For bulk purchases, please call 026-235-1251, 026-235-1251. We'll be back to take your comment on all that we've been discussing, the Auditor General's report, focusing on infrastructure that we've put together to fight flooding, and also about how our own activities are disturbing water and access to potable water in this country. Benjamin will join me for that. Do stay.
Most people know that trees produce oxygen that we breathe.
Indeed, trees produce oxygen, and we've been talking about the importance of water and treating it as a helper and as a killer. I mean,
water will treat you the same way you treat it.
Yeah, it's just like
I don't know whether we've ever thought of that. The way you
like
treat
fire.
it is how it will treat you
It's
back.
just like fire. So
yeah.
we've been doing we've been having a two-pronged conversation here this morning about flooding in our country, and also about activities that affect water and how portable it is and access. So you can call us. We'll be glad to take your comments on these two major issues we've been discussing today. And Benjamin, the number to call.
0302-211-691, extension 2. 0302-211-691, Extension 2. Call that number and get interactive with us. Let us know what you think about how potable our water is. Mind you, when the Ghana Water Company Limited, for example, says it's going to cost more to give you the same amount of water, is because of the processes they have to go through, turbidity and all of that. And again, flooding. I check like this country, every year, it's a flooding situation, but it's on the way to land.
Yeah, Benjamin, and it's really sad. It's really sad when you think about all the lives. I remember Dr. Aya Hayford. I hope I got her name right. Yeah. About 2 or 3 years ago, that lady lost her life on that stretch in Teshi.
Is it not the medical
doctor,
officer?
Yes. It's sad. It's disheartening. You talk about the number of people who've lost their lives over here. We were just discussing June 3, the flood and fire disaster. So clearly there is a problem that we have to deal with. But like you discussed this morning, when we check our books, the talk doesn't match the reality.
It doesn't.
We have up and down from Kumasi. Please make it short, straight to the point. We don't have a lot of time. Let's hear you, sir. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. I want to comment on the perennial flood situation. You see, at times, when it is rainy season, that we talk on the flooding situation, but it is not one-day activity. Because people are not supposed to build on certain areas, but they have built, and it has caused a lot of problems. What are we supposed to do? We have to try all we can to make sure that all those buildings are being demolished so that the water can have a way to pass through. But if we decide to console with them, oh, sorry for that, and this and that, and then the following year, the rain comes again, and they are still there. And property are being destroyed, and people's lives are being lost. What are we doing?
Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Abendao, for calling. And Benjamin, I think in addition to pulling down the structures, if somebody failed to alert a prospective builder or a builder that this is a waterway, you aren't allowed to, that person must also be punished.
It starts, that is where the problem starts.
It.
Who even gives these people permission to build on,
so I think
waterways and all of
that? While we at it, if we demolish people buildings of people who didn't have permits, fair enough. But if that person was given a permit, he must be compensated. You can't just destroy someone's building. I mean, the person may not even know. They may come from somewhere else to buy land somewhere and develop it. And they don't even know it's in a waterway. So
let's check out Jake from Kasua. Hello, Jake.
Yeah, hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Please go straight to the point. What are your thoughts?
There is this, I want to make a report.
Okay.
Yeah, the report is that there is this heavy-duty truck that normally come around my neighborhood in the night and sometimes early in the morning. I think they are trying, there is this water body around the area and then they are trying to mine.
All right, Jake, you know what? Can you kindly speak to our producers off air and give us all the details on this, and we'll do our checks.
Exactly.
And we'll follow up on this story. But we appreciate that you've called to inform us. We do this together with you. You give us the tips, we follow up, and we put out the story. So thank you very much, Jake. Our producers will speak to you off air. Benjamin.
Succinctly said. You can still share your thoughts. We have another caller, Bernice.
Abdul, joining us from Kumasi. Good morning. Let's hear you, sir.
Good morning. Please, the situation that we are having in this country depends on everything that the politicians are taking on. Because every year, disasters occur. NADMO will go and then use our money to pay those in the water. This NADMO thing, for me, every year I've been watching those things and I'm not happy with it. Because they told them to resettle. They refuse. They keep on being on that settlement. And when disaster happens, they will use Ghanaians' money to go and settle them, to go and compensate with them. Why don't they leave them alone and then just demolish all those structures? And then we have a clean water lock areas. This system is very, very boring, honestly. The government should stop spending money on disasters on flood to people.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. That's Abdul from Kumasi. Do we have a last caller or do we wrap up with Abdul? All right, our last caller, Jihad, joining us from WA. How was WA this morning, Jihad? Hello?
How are you doing?
Great, let's hear you.
Yeah, please, I think my opinion on this particular matter has to do with the government and, stakeholders are not actually committed to, solving the problem. If not, we can't continue having these issues and conversations going through, and then we are not seeing much being done. Every year we have to lose life because of flooding and some of these things. Meanwhile, if the government and, authorities were up in doing, and they know what they are in there for, and then they go for people who don't comply to the regulations and whatever, we would have been out of this mess. We can't continue putting on, public money in some of the things that we don't even, it affects everybody. But when it comes to where we need to go straight forward to the point and get the problem being fixed, you don't see anything being done. So we are just tickling ourselves and laughing every day. Every year the flooding will come, it will take away people's lives. Then we get back and then we sit down, we have the conversation, leave it there and go wait for the next year to come. Then we will, the conversation will have to go and begin again. It is actually not helping us.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And that's Jihad from WA, clearly frustrated like every other citizen in this country. But we have to go. Thank you so much for your company. We have a few messages for you before we leave. And just so you know, the same income, asset or financial transaction can be taxed by 2 or more jurisdictions. This is known as double taxation. Double taxation treaties, DTT, allow income recipients to offset the tax already paid on investment income in another country against their tax liability in the country of residence. Let's offer you the very best of progressive and flexible way of owning your home in Ghana. Rent to own a 2, 3 or 4 bedroom house or beachfront villa in the new Accra city. Cities and habitats. Rent to own at a price you can afford and at a pace you can pay. Visit www.newaccra.ct for more details or call Benjamin.
Call or WhatsApp them 055-530-300. You can also call 0577 911-101 or 0557-054-635. The Planned Cities Extension Project, shaping Ghana's urban future. And hopefully we've shaped your thinking about our national situation when it comes to flooding this morning. It's been fun.
Yes, it has. And once again, thank you so much for joining the program. As always, we are very interactive. Even after the show ends, you can drop your comments. We go through them. We'll get back to you. But do stay with us here at JoyNews, home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. News Desk with Aisha Ibrahim is up next. See you tomorrow.
Great day.